Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
In my association with Project Group, they definitely withheld information.
The whole fleet of them was on the ASA. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Total Disclosure. I am your host, Ty, and we have a special show tonight. Michaela Fachar is a former national security professional who served as an all-source analyst in the U.S. Air Force Reserve for 6 years and held various intelligence roles within the U.S. government. In the fall of 2021, during her first semester at Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service, she had a profound experience making contact with NHI. With no prior knowledge or exposure to the phenomena, she was informed of her contact by an element of the U.S. government. Committed to her career in national security, Michaela confided only in a close circle, keeping the experience secret to avoid misconceptions and remain focused on her mission, not to mention the stigma that comes with it. However, a year later, her NHI contact intensified, kind of ultimately reshaping the course of her life, like it does with most. Earlier this month, Michaela came forward as a whistleblower, sharing details from her 2020 to 2021 Air Force deployment in Qatar in hopes of corroborating information disclosed by Matt Livelsberger, who was part of the Tesla truck explosion and subsequent manifesto that came out on Sean Ryan's show via the other guy's name I forget. I think it started with Shu. So with that being said, thank you, Michaela, for joining us tonight. I'm super happy to have you. I really want to not waste any time. So again, thank you for coming on and thank you for your service to this country.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. So I want to start. I actually kind of want to start with a little banter, and I do this kind of ease the tension a little bit. Some people get kind of locked up, but did you see this? What happened over DC a couple nights ago with this helicopter and the plane?
Yes, I did.
What's your take on that? Because I saw this and I really feel terrible for all of the people affected and the families. So, Godspeed and I hope they're all dealing with it in their own way. But did it look odd to you?
Yes, I've never been on a helicopter, and I don't know, with the NVGs and the night vision goggles and like what everything looks like, but it is bizarre. And then we have different information coming out that suggests that there were not enough ATCs in the air traffic controllers who were able to on comms with any of the aircraft. So that could have led to that incident. But if we look at patterns in legacy media and the reporting, we're not going to get a clear answer from the Pentagon or the CIA or from the intelligence community. And so hoping that the Trump administration, and I'm sure they will, come out and reveal what actually went wrong.
Yeah, because I saw a longer video of it, and right now it's playing on the media is this really short clip where you barely see the light make contact with the plane. And I saw the longer clip. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me how they didn't visibly say, okay, we need to move. Like there's no, I mean, it was like, it looked deliberate, and I hate to even go that way. Yeah. So
this is where I'm not clear, right? It's like, I want to know who the casualties on the helicopter were. And that really determines what went wrong. And if there are any casualties, I mean, we're getting mixed information from the media on that aspect. That would be really where we get the answer on any of that.
Right. And have you ever seen anything like that before, where a military chopper on a mission hits a civilian jumbo jet?
No, and it's weird because I lived up in McLean, Virginia. And so I always drove from DC at nighttime. There are a ton of helicopters. Like, it's business as usual. So for this to happen
seems
really
odd.
Weird.
Yeah, it seems a little bit odd. But you obviously, like I said, my thoughts and prayers or whatever go out to the families and anyone who's affected, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of that. So I want to have you on because now I saw your post. When the whole thing was kind of going down with Sean Ryan, and it piqued my interest, obviously, as a member of the quote unquote UFO community. Anytime someone with credibility like yours comes out and says anything, I think it's important that we take note and give that person at least the benefit of their credibility and their background, to at least hear them out and not dismiss what they say just because we don't want to believe it. Now, with that being said, I do want to start at kind of your early life. You talked to me off the record or off air about your contact, and I want to kind of set the stage. So where did all of this begin? What made you choose to go into the military, and where'd you grow up? Did you have a good early life, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, thank you. So I grew up in Astoria, Queens, in New York City. And my parents I was the only child for a long time. My parents were together. They got divorced when I was 10 years old. And then when they did get divorced, it took me on a new journey, because before 10 years old, and I was born 1994, I never moved outside of my home. So I was very comfortable, and I had this sense of coziness in my home. I remember that feeling. And the really weird thing that if I look back when I was like 5 years old, as early as I can remember, I remember always laying in bed and knowing, just knowing that I was comfortable and that was going to change in the future. And also the ephemeral nature of life. Just I would cry every night almost in bed, because something would say to me, don't get too comfortable. Life is temporary and your parents won't be there forever. And I don't know where that came from. I didn't think it was weird. I just thought I was always very sensitive. But after I had my conscious experience, which we'll get into later, I realized that I've had contact with NHI since I was very young.
And this is a kind of something that's ongoing in the community. We see a lot of this in the community. Is some sort of moment happens. Now, I call it the moment of conversion. For me, it happened with seeing a craft come over my head. It's that moment that that this is not a black and white world. There's a lot more gray than mama and daddy ever taught us. And then people start realizing, or they go through steps like hypnotic regression and try to find out more. And if they've had contact, and most of the time they have, to some degree. So when you said that you're getting these feelings about, life is short and it's, don't get comfortable, are these fleeting thoughts in your head, or is it like a disembodied voice?
It wasn't even, it's not like a voice. It was just a knowing about, it was just a knowing. And there are different terms when I look at it through the lens that I have today and how we have a lot of experiencers come out. talk about like telepathy or the psi aspect of things, it's strange because it doesn't come from the brain. It just comes from the heart. It's like, I know this is not forever. Mommy and dad are not going to be here forever. Right. And I used to cry. That would be one of the weirder things from my early childhood. Besides some other things that happen, which we can get into if you're interested.
I am. Let's hear it all.
So when I was, go ahead.
No. I was going to say, so, all right. So you, at what age do you think you start having these kind of like adult thoughts, existential kind of thoughts?
Now that you ask it that way, I think that it wasn't really like an age it started. It seems more realistically, given that I was really young, it feels more realistically like a conversation with an adult.
Interesting.
And so I would cry before bed, and it was like I was having a conversation as a reminder that I shouldn't get too comfortable, that, life is all these like higher lessons, I guess, that obviously made me cry when I was younger because I was young. And then I wouldn't think about it. I would just play and stuff. But actually my parents, my mother thought I had signs of some, I wouldn't say disability. I just had these weird quirks like OCD. And my mother would bring me to the doctor and get me checked. Like normal parent, get me checked and things like that. But when I was 5 years old, I was actually really scared of E.T. the extraterrestrial. So I'm not having E.T. contact, right? Like the weird anomalous contact would be the realizations that I'm having at 5 years old, or what I thought were realizations at nighttime. Another thing that happened was that, the printing paper that comes in a stack?
Yeah.
I was scared of E.T. the extraterrestrial because he looks scary in the movie. It's like Uncanny Valley. But I actually drew E.T. pointing up at a UFO, and I drew like the ground where it's like a line on the bottom of the white paper, and he's pointing up, and I write phone home in like a speech bubble. I did that same exact drawing on all of the pages of a stack of printing paper. No different. It was the same thing.
It's not even a good flip book, like, right? His pose didn't change, right? Keep pointing out.
It's a still flip book.
But that is just kind of odd. So, all right. So it sounds like you're very intuitive for some reason, and maybe I think we could probably guess why now. But staying on course here, so you're young, you're having these really, really intense thoughts, having trouble sleeping, or at least without crying beforehand, due to the nature of reality. And so what happens next? What experiences are you referring to? From the other things that you wanted to talk about from your childhood.
Oh yeah, so just really weird things like that, like a little bit of OCD, and other quirks that I had where I liked horror films. I loved Freddy Krueger, The Exorcist, Nightmare on Elm Street, the 80s version. I loved all of that. I loved horror. But E.T., the extraterrestrial, that was where I drew the line, which is like really irrational when I looked back at it. So it just feels normal.
Yeah. So what you're saying is like, all right, people, like, I'm trying to tell you, like, I like horror movies, right? So like those things didn't scare me, but for some reason this child's movie did.
Yes.
Okay. So all right. That makes sense. And that is odd. I think I had a similar experience. I remember seeing after I saw, my own sighting, I was begging my mother, begging her to take me to the library so I could find out more, because she told me what I saw was a UFO. She was very clear. She was like, oh, sounds like you saw a UFO. Wow. Yeah. And so she brought me to the library, and I remember seeing a book that had a flying saucer on it. And like, just stared at it for like 20 minutes. And, you know, it threw me for a loop because, you know, everything became like so much more real. So it sounds like you're having these kind of same experiences where these coincidences and these things that don't add up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how did someone, okay, so you have a pretty good childhood, but your parents divorced, which is just oddly, this day and age, it's kind of semi like normal, I guess. Everyone's parents are divorced these days. So aside from those things, that what leads you down the military path? Of course, you sound like a very, you know, very intelligent, you know, pretty young woman. What brings you to the military?
Yeah, so when my parents got divorced at 10 years old, my father was actually doing business in China, and I moved to China with him. Spent about 3 years there. I lived in Shenzhen, which is southeast China, right across water from Hong Kong. And I lived there for 2.5 years. Then I moved back to live with my mom in New York City. I would go back and forth between China and the United States. My father wasn't in government. He was a private businessman and entrepreneur. And he married my stepmother, who's Chinese. So I have half my family, or a quarter of my family is Chinese. And when I went to college, I really hadn't thought about what I wanted to do. But growing up in that time, so I was born 94, I was actually in second grade when 9/11 happened. So the backdrop of 9/11, national security became a personal thing, because I remember leaving second grade, leaving my class half day or in the morning when the situation with the World Trade Center happened. And so it became very personal. And so when I was in college, I figured, okay, well, I have a China background. I speak some Mandarin. I should improve it. And well, what's important in society, in American society, the US-China national security situation was becoming more intense. And this was around 2012, but it wasn't really like front and center like what we saw under the Trump administration in 2016. But I knew it was climbing. So I said, let me go into international relations and go into public service, where I believe I could bring my background and my personal experiences into a public service or national security career for the United States. And so I went down this path. I actually applied for an American government scholarship to study in China in undergrad. I went to the University at Buffalo. I didn't get it. It was a very competitive scholarship, but I did get a Confucius Institute scholarship, which, if anyone understands or knows the China situation, the Confucius Institute was a Chinese language and culture program that the Chinese Communist Party or the Chinese government funded so that it would attach itself to, or, you know, jointly run Chinese programs in the United States. Well, they shut down, I think, around 2020 under the Trump administration, and then it continued on under the Biden administration, that the Confucius Institute started shutting down because the funding was from Hanban, which was through the Ministry of Education, but there was also a propaganda arm called the United Front Work that funded this, which worked in the best interest of Chinese national security. So the US government said, no, we can't have this in our schools, creating pipelines to American talent and potential future talent of the United States that go into the US government, who can be later co-opted. That's pretty much what defines the US-China situation. And so I finished college. I went and worked in private sector for a little bit. Then I decided to apply for the CIA and simultaneously pursue an enlistment with the Air Force Reserve. And the reason why I pursued an enlistment, even though I had a bachelor's degree at the time, was it was 2018-19, and things were really ramping up with intensity between the US and China. And at that point, I said, let me just get my foot in the door. I'm sure if I want to go in the CIA, that can happen later. So I was at a fork in the road where the CIA actually called me. So I applied in around May, I would say May 2018. I got a random phone call in summer of 2018, like in July. I felt like I did horrible on that phone call. It was like a preliminary interview so that they can, you know, decide whether or not to allow me to continue in the pipeline.
Right.
And then you don't hear anything, and it's really a black box. You don't know. You could be in the pipeline for 5 years and people have got shut down because of their polygraph, different things. And I had lived a lot, extensively in China. So I wasn't certain that my polygraph and my clearance was going to go through as quickly as I wanted it to. So knowing, there were priorities with what I wanted to do, the mission, US-China picture. And I said to myself that the CIA will be there later. So let me just jump in and wear the uniform, which I always wanted to do. And so I actually turned down the CIA for the in-person group interview. They called me in December of 2018. And I remember my heart sinking because I'm like, dang, like I really want to do this. I mean, also because I like human intelligence, because I like the human element of things.
Right. So,
but yeah.
So that must be really hard to, but I can see what you're doing, because like you said, you can always, go back after your service and work with the CIA afterwards. But, this is kind of it was a one opportunity kind of moment to get involved at that kind of level.
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
And from a national security perspective, I'm saying now we know there's a lot of complexity with the national security community, politicization, weapon, all that stuff, right? From my eyes, I'm brand new to all of this, right? For me, the CIA is like watching salt film. It's not seeing the bigger picture. And from a career standpoint, the CIA is like tip of the spear for intelligence. I went to Georgetown. They recruit from Georgetown. Like anyone, and you can identify them. By the way, you can identify them, which I don't know if that's a good thing for operational security, but you can identify the peers who really want to go in the CIA. They're not quiet about it, which is really funny considering we have, a bunch of internationals in the program and arguably definitely some counterintelligence that go to Georgetown. I mean, it's the best international relations program in the world, but we can get into that later. But yes, that was the path that I took.
Are you saying that you think that other countries are sending their intelligence into our school of intelligence?
So it's a school for foreign service, but yes, of course, just from the backdrop, like just from a non-national security standpoint, Georgetown University year on year is the #1 program. All the conspiracies, by the way, of like globalism, New World Order, Georgetown is at the heart of all of that.
Right.
And you have a lot of money. They have their own investment fund, and you have a lot of money and a lot of interests who are, they're engaged with this organization. So it's a huge center of gravity for not just today's foreign policy, but also future foreign policy. It transcends that, by the way. There's also a lot of competing interests in non-government organizations, think tanks, corporations. Washington, D.C. is the capital essentially of the world. So it makes sense that this would be the battleground of ideas and interests.
So okay. So you go in with a strong sense of this, of national security is something that's important to you. With that being said, because I don't just like to talk about, extraterrestrial stuff. I do want to ask you, should citizens, because we watched like the Chinese spy balloon, right, when it came over the United States and was clearly gathering intel and made its way over some sensitive areas in our country. Should the citizens of the United States be worried about China as a military power?
They should be worried. Okay, so they should. Okay, so this is the privacy and security. National security is myopic in the sense that it's focused on the nation. Mm-hmm. Individual security boils down to privacy. For me, I don't see a difference in corporations having access to our private data and China having access to our private data.
Right.
China is going to do something to undermine the US government. That being said, there's this false illusion or this false idea that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So if you have people who don't trust US government, I included, right? But I also know that the Chinese government's not my friend. In fact, I'm going to place my bets on the US government because they swear an oath to the Constitution and I'm an American citizen. But what we're seeing with a lot of people who are pissed off about what happened with TikTok is they're going to Xiaohongshu, which is Red Note, the Chinese app, which I have a very unique perspective of. Like, I don't think it's necessarily bad. However, they're going there and they're seeing a more still manufactured. It's social media. We always manufacture a presence, but they're seeing a more holistic version of China than what you see presented in the news. In the news, it's always national security focused. So it's always that fear-based kind of information.
Warmongering.
When they go to, and when you go in Xiaohongshu, you see it from a more, this is what it is. And you see a lot of people calling other people shills of the Chinese Communist Party. And just because we're seeing a more holistic view of China doesn't make someone, and being able to recognize that doesn't make someone a shill of the CCP. They're a shill when they get paid to push out propaganda and to manufacture narratives that are good for the CCP.
Absolutely. And the thing about the ban on TikTok is, I'm not even sure where I stand on it, because again, there's part of me that is like, all right, I don't want my data at all being taken by a government, any government. But you look around and, Facebook did it and sold their, sold a bunch of their data. I mean, it led to, the hearing that Mark Zuckerberg looked like an alien at. And, he's since changed his appearance to look like like he's in 11th grade with gecko jeans and a chain. But, so it's not just TikTok. I mean, it's every social media platform. The data is I wouldn't call it safe. But with the TikTok one, I think it was just so overt that politicians really wanted to make like hey, this is where we draw the line, So I think it was kind of more of a political stunt.
Yeah, and they're not helping anyone, so.
Nope. So in your honest assessment of the Chinese Communist Party, here in the United States, we have something known as Arrow. It came from something known as the UAP Task Force, which came from OSAP, which came from, yada, yada, yada. Do you think, or is it possible that the Chinese are doing what we're doing and they're looking into UFOs?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think that with because here in the United States, we have rules, regulations, and, things that we can't do, we won't do, it's overseen for the most part. We like to think that. What I fear about countries like China is the handlebars. I mean, the guardrails aren't there. So they're going to test it and they're going to do things and they're going to go past the point of what we may consider to be malevolent activity in order to advance their military capabilities and other strategic elements. Is that something that does worry you?
Lack of oversight worries me. And this goes back to disclosure, because we do have an element of our government that apparently has access to UAPs and things like that. There's no oversight. Then we hear about a so-called P3 program with psionics, and Jake Barber, he went on American Alchemy and said, well, it's not human trafficking because they're happy to do it. The problem is we've had whistleblowers, American citizen whistleblowers from Black programs that don't have congressional oversight. They're threatened, killed, right? So there's a clear risk, a clear danger in working in a program that doesn't have oversight and then has a for-profit interest. So now you're bringing people from a third world country who you're like, Jake Barber can say all he wants. Yeah, well, they want to come. They love it. Yeah, as opposed to what? You're going to a third world country where you're giving them an offer they can't refuse if they want to take care of their children. This is the same argument as like a mining company going to the Congo and paying $2 a day to Congolese people. And you're basically saying, well, you're lucky that you're getting this money. Otherwise, you're going to starve. Is this really the kind of dynamic that we want to operate on behalf of the United States without congressional oversight?
That's a really good comparison to make. Very good comparison to make. And because I've had other whistleblowers on the show, like Michael Herrera, and Michael Herrera saw it from the other side. And he said that these people are taken from third world countries. And, like you kind of just said it, it's not like they have another option. Right. So I find that to be very, very, very uncomfortable. And because you don't know what to make of it. I don't want it to be true. And of course, we don't want, our government to be dealing in call it what it is, right? Slavery, modern day slavery, at least. But we've seen that our government and military have been caught with their pants down so many times. That's what allows for a conspiratorial environment to thrive in the first place, is because things like JFK, because things like MLK, MK Ultra. We've just seen so much.
No one talks about Malcolm X.
Yeah.
When he started to put the pieces together, he suddenly disappeared.
Isn't it weird? Right. So I guess that's where I kind of was getting to, is we like to think that the United States has rules and regulations, but it seems that those rules and regulations they kind of fall away once the Black, unacknowledged special access program, once we get into that territory, it seems to be that no accountability, no oversight, no jurisdiction, no borders, nothing.
This is the problem with the US government, what you just mentioned to the T. They created a system. It's like a buffer zone from the actual reality of free market dynamics of the real world, how everything, like when there are no artificial being man-made, there are no man-made rules, and things are allowed to flourish. And then you see they're using loopholes, using different mechanisms of putting away Black programs, unacknowledged special access programs, right? Like the buffer zone that the surface level US government created is not the one that really exists. It's not base reality. It's a subset of reality. And then they operate from the lens, right? So you have people who are groomed in a system that was created by people like them, who put them out into work in real world problems, national security, foreign policy. And then they operate from this myopic lens that everything operates in the same way that they know everything to operate. And that's completely false. And that's why foreign policy has been a disaster. That's why the US government is having a really difficult time with the China issue, because China blurs the lines of civil military fusion. So, obviously, so China can leverage its private sector, private individuals and corporations to achieve national security goals.
Well said. Very well said. So what like to kind of get back on the linear path. All right. So you can't go to the CIA. You go into the military. Now what job maybe I'm stumbling over my words here. Where did it go from there? Obviously, you have that fork in the road, CIA, military, and you go the military route, national security route. You have a high background, like we just discussed in the China situation. So you're someone that could be valuable to the asset of intelligence. So, what job do you take?
I take the role of an all-source analyst. What an all-source analyst does is, so we have specialization where you can do signals intelligence, imagery from satellite imagery, a bunch of different things. I did all source because it was such a black box for me that I was like, I don't want to pigeonhole myself. So let me do all source where I actually synthesize and aggregate or integrate all of these different kinds of intelligence or all this kind of information. And I'm able to put it together to present and see the whole picture.
So instead of it, I like this. So, there's the adage about, 10 people could be, touching an elephant and they're all going to describe it differently, but, they don't have the whole picture, right? So you're the person that is standing back and able to see the entire thing. Is that kind of, is that a good representation?
Yes. And so there is a different level of analysis for looking at situation or like looking at intelligence. Like I could look at local level. I could look at intelligence for like Idlib, like Syria or Aleppo, and I could look at intelligence there and extract different kinds of signals intelligence and be able to paint a picture of what ISIS or someone else is doing in the area, right? And then there's a more macro level of analysis where I can do more regional kind of things where I look at like maybe Ukraine, Russia. And operational would be like me looking at what's happening there and then being able to provide a more macro assessment for the military, U.S. military, so they're abreast of it. And then there's like a strategic level of analysis, which also integrates more of the temporal component where you're looking at things from a grand strategy, maybe like a theory of everything intelligence perspective. And a question I would answer from that lens is, what is China's end game, or what is China planning to do in the next 5 years? And that would be more strategic.
Okay. That makes sense. And so that's what all source analyst is. Cause I was going to ask you what that kind of meant, because it's not a term I've heard before. So this is with the Air Force.
Yes. And so with the Air Force as a junior enlisted, I was more at the, I want to say like operational, but also kind of tactical level. So tactical being the more localized level and what's happening right now with this terrorist group. Operational would be like Operation Enduring Freedom or OFS, Operation Freedom Sentinel in Afghanistan. It's more, and it would be more like, I feel like it would be more regional, but this is all up for debate, obviously, from different point of view. And strategic wasn't in this domain, but I always loved and admired the strategic lens of things. I wanted to like get ahead of the curve. Like if we're focusing on what are they going to do tomorrow, I'm like, what are they going to do like in 5 years? Right. I want to be able to like figure out what they want to do there. That way I can work backwards and backwards engineer decision making and provide intelligence according to that kind of decision making.
So are you working on like, so do you have to have what kind of clearance do you have to be able to do this work? Do you need a clearance to do this work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So only needed a top secret SCI clearance for my Air Force gig. And it varies depending on what your mission is across the Air Force. For my specific mission, I only needed top secret SCI or TSSCI.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was a contractor at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, I received my counterintelligence polygraph.
Got it. Okay. And when you were dealing with these, when you were doing your job, did anything ever stand out to you that made you pause and go, wait a second, That doesn't seem right. That doesn't fit. Where is it? Because we want to get into your contact and your specific contact, but is there anything on the job prior that maybe looking back, you're like, huh, maybe that wasn't what I thought it was? As far as intelligence goes.
Would this be in relation to UAPs and NHI?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, so not in my intelligence, but sorry.
It was a long pause. I was like, I hope she heard me correctly.
Yeah, I was trying to think. So not when I was doing intelligence, not until I was deployed overseas, but when I was in PT or physical, we were doing just morning level PT physical training at my tech school, where I was learning in the tradecraft the tradecraft of intelligence. I was laying on my back, and this was in San Angelo, Texas, at Goodfellow Air Force Base. I was laying on my back at like 4 a.m. and stretching, looking up at the sky, utterly exhausted. And I saw like very weird activity. Like you see the satellites. It's so dark outside, you could see the satellites. But then I see these weird things moving that were intentional and doing these weird, not technology, really what I could describe to as a UFO.
Right.
And the first
banking 90-degree turns, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and there were 2 of them. And I remember the first thought that popped in my head was like, I was just like, American pilots they're so childish. That was I just thought they were just like a couple, like, like the pilot bros or, our pilots, like a bunch of bros just like messing around with each other. Like it wasn't my instinct that it was UFOs. And then the thought, I was like, well, I'm in Texas, so there are definitely like underground facilities or something. So maybe they have that technology here. And then I moved on. I didn't think anything of it. It was later, which we'll get into, when I blew the whistle and I was processing mission reports, that I'm like reflecting on what I saw in tech school. And I'm thinking, okay, this is really strange. And then now we're hearing about our programs that we do have UAPs or UFOs and on all of that other jazz.
Right. So, yeah. Okay. So that would be an instance that I would, that makes sense. That's what I was kind of going for. Anything that led up to, and now in hindsight, you're like, huh, that actually probably wasn't human now that I look back at it. But it's funny that you bring up underground military bases, because I just was speaking with Congressman Burleson, and he brought up deep underground military bases in his district that are owned by Lockheed Martin. And it's obviously, you can't FOIA Lockheed, and you can't FOIA these private aerospace industries, private aerospace companies. It's this loophole that has been created with the military industrial complex. So you gotta wonder, what do they have? Like what, how, I know you said you're thinking about what China's doing 5 years from now. I'm thinking about what's the United States got now that's 5 years, 20 years ahead. Because obviously,
can I tell you something?
Yeah, please. Like the DARPANET, to complete my thought, they had DARPANET or ARPANET. Maybe, I don't think that maybe the D wasn't there yet, but they had the internet, 20 years before the public. So, I mean, they're way ahead of us. So scares me.
Back to what you said about the FOIA. That was one of the excuses or reasons for pushing all of this technology into the private sector, so that the US government wouldn't have to answer to FOIA. I'm just going to put this out there. That's absolute garbage. That was a garbage reason. People wanted to profit off of this technology. The FOIA reason was what naive people like Eisenhower believed was the reason why it was necessary to move it to the private sector. But if you look at FOIA requests, it's laughable because they don't give us the information. They don't answer FOIA. They don't have to answer FOIA. It is all, it's all nice and dandy to be able to see. As an American, I can ask for specific information, but we see it time and again. They don't answer the FOIA requests. And it's almost passive aggressive because some of the FOIA responses are literally like everything's redacted. So it was a for-profit, self-interested entity that sold to the US government under Eisenhower that they're going to push it into the private sector. This was all it was a scam.
Wow.
And no one's ever said that before, but you guys, if you hear this, we all have looked at redacted files. So we looked at the information they give us and it's garbage. And they also throw in a lot of fluff.
Yeah.
It's
They'll give you,
it was all a scam.
They'll give you a page and you'll have, like, say it's 12 paragraphs, 11 and 3/4 of the document is black. You get an and here, a 2 down here. So there's no way you can make anything of it. It's funny because John Greenwald, who runs the Black Vault, he in the UFO community, I know you're new, but when John Greenwald Jr., when his name comes up, just think of, like, I call him the FOIA king, right? He does all that. FOIA is everything and anything. And he had just he just posted the other day, in 2025, he got a response from a request from 2013. And the response was, we don't have what you want. It took how many years to say we don't have it? Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's blasphemy.
So the United States geniuses, I like to call them that. It's a term of endearment for the government. They have a big L because they were played by for-profit interests in the military-industrial complex back in the day.
Absolutely, and I even in my intro, I have the, Eisenhower kind of telling us about the military-industrial complex. A lot of people in the UFO community think that, Eisenhower, that presidential, that time frame is kind of where the cover-up really rooted itself. Like it solidified what it needed to do and deployed measures that would keep it secret until, we're talking still to this day. So, in your experience, you're saying that maybe that wasn't true?
I don't know when it happened. It wouldn't be the first time that the US government was tricked because people don't understand how free market and private interests work. It wouldn't be the first time. But it's definitely one of those times. And I'm only going based off what Eisenhower said. He took responsibility. So he must have made some decisions naively made decisions that further empowered the military industrial complex. And then when he took notice, that's why he informed the American public. But I don't think that's where it started. Okay.
And so back on track. I like to jump around, clearly too much. So you're working in intelligence. All-Source Analyst. And what leads us to you blowing the whistle? Let's start going through those events and the timeline. Try to keep it sequential. So maybe let's start with the earliest thing that happened and bring it up to modern day.
Yeah. So I actually wasn't really thinking of blowing the whistle. I didn't see anything wrong with what I had seen when I was deployed. In fact, I was in E4 at the time. I was junior enlisted, and there was a lot I didn't know about the culture, military culture, active duty. It was basically my first time active duty in an operational capacity because I was in the Air Force or from the Air Force Reserve. So I actually wasn't even thinking about blowing the whistle about it. Just the pieces or the connections I made with information gaps and some of those ethical questions in government and in the military national security converged and came together in the moment that I was in Sean Ryan podcast X Space on Matt Leibelsberger, the Cybertruck whistleblower. because when I was in that space, I was anxious about Matt Leibelsberger, and I was anxious operating from the information we had at the time, because he's a whistleblower and he was a whistleblower. We know there's a lot at stake for that. And then the stakes are heightened with the fact that a Green Beret doing what he did and leveraging his skills in tradecraft to do what he did, just, we were operating in a level of uncertainty. But given what he had done, I said, I can't sit here and watch you guys try to, make each other feel better about the UAP nexus, because Shoemate was already like, I don't want to touch UAPs. Yeah, he's like, I don't want to touch UAPs. Like, this shit is weird. It's fringe. And that wasn't important at the time. That was not important. The UAP thing did not matter in that whole email. What really mattered was he taking that email. Now it's up for debate whether he did send the email. I think he did.
Yeah, I think the consensus
he did.
is that he did. So I have it up on screen right now.
That's perfect. And yes, the most important thing was that he blew the whistle on something he participated in regarding some allegations against CIA, DEA, DOD operations in Afghanistan. And it's a very serious allegation. And so they're just looking at that, and then looking at what has happened to whistleblowers, him putting in there that he worked on unacknowledged special access program, all of this information, right? This is a Green Beret that we've invested a lot of money in. Not everyone can make it past go through the training of a Green Beret, right? And then spend their whole lifetime and then survived as a Green Beret, right? Was about to retire, and then be able to move on to the next step in his journey. And he felt that this needed to be conveyed, that he needed to give this information. Yeah. That was that just something I just said, you know what, the UAP thing, I can at least corroborate from an intelligence standpoint that not the information flow has stopgaps. There are choke points in information flow. That was going back to the blue on blue and the CIA liaison coming out to tell me, don't report it. And then also talking about UAPs. There were UAPs all up in the Middle East. We have video footage. We weren't reporting it. Another choke point, not nefarious. And I'm also not saying the CIA liaison's nefarious, but the fact is that it's not a blockchain, right? The information is not making it to all of the places it needs to go. And so I said, this can corroborate that this guy is not crazy about UAP. UAP is not even the important thing, but boom, that's gone. Information flow, stopgap, boom. Well, that would explain why people don't have information on God only knows what kind of activities are going on in Afghanistan. I had, when I blew the whistle, I actually was really scared, because we hear what happens to whistleblowers. And because I was scared, and I'm nobody, and I didn't work on Black programs, but I live on Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And I made that clear just in case, right? I said, you know what, let's open source my location because of the patterns we were starting to see. But here, Matt Leibelsberger blowing the whistle in such a way. Sean Ryan put a post out. He put a X post saying, I'm disappearing with my family. And now I'm sitting here like, great. Now I'm the next piece of the puzzle. So, and people were telling me that they were securing poppy fields. They were standing outside of people's houses, intimidating them so that the person would do something so that they can kill them. This is all entrapment, by the way. And I'm getting more scared because now I've become like there's a force of gravity where all of these allegations and information are coming out. And I'm like, it was kind of like an oh shit moment because I'm on some list and I don't know who's listed. Hopefully it's like not, nefarious for-profit corporate shadow corporations who are exploiting all of this, like Big Pharma and God knows who else, right? But hopefully it's just on the regular national security list. And this will go later. I'll let you talk. But the next day, I decided to summon the U.S. national security apparatus to at least make sure that I was on their list because I didn't know what playing field I was operating on anymore. People are still debating UAPs. And I said, we're past that, man. There are allegations of crimes against humanity in Afghanistan. And I'm not, I'm not risking it. So.
Right. And with the, this is people may forget, but one thing that happened, it was a while ago, but when we first invaded Afghanistan after 9/11, and of all people, Geraldo Rivera did a show and showed that Marines were guarding poppy fields, and he's asking why are you doing that? And the response from the military is, well, we're guarding the poppy so that it doesn't get into the hands of the bad guys. It's like, oh, so you're watering it for them? You're keeping it up for what then?
So for the good guys who are going to smuggle poppy into the United States using the Department of Defense, so that they can fund black ops and whatever activities that didn't get approved with congressional budget.
Right.
Those good guys.
Daniel Inouye, senator from Hawaii, made that speech at the UN. He basically called it out, saying, and he was one of the people that Harry Reid went to, out of the Gang of Eight at the time, and put the $22 million aside for OSAP, advanced. God, OSAP and what later became ATIP. There's so many goddamn acronyms, but what was OSAP? Advanced Weapons Systems Applications Program. And Bigelow won the bid and kind of fell apart. I think in its nature and what it did, but apparently that's where Elizondo comes from and all these guys. But Daniel Inouye made a speech talking about the deep state, essentially saying that they have their own army, their own navy, their own fundraising mechanisms, where they operate without oversight, without accountability, and they do not have or play by our laws, and this is super dangerous. And we've kind of garnered this culture since 9/11 that security outweighs we gave up our freedoms to a degree after 9/11, and we did it willingly because we were like, we need to be safe. And, once we give those away, it's not like they're going to hand over the power. So I want to hear more about these blue on blue moments. When you say a blue on blue, can you tell the audience what you mean by that?
A blue on blue is a friendly fire incident, and it's not uncommon. So if you are familiar with Jocko Willink and his book and what he talks about in his podcast, Extreme Ownership is his book. He was in charge of a team that was involved in a blue on blue incident. And so it could be that U.S. forces have two teams operating in an area and they didn't deconflict. So they mistook each other as the adversary, things like that. It can mean a variety of things. And I don't have all the details of it. I do have the details of where the repository and where the information is, so that I can provide it to someone who has a need to know, like Congressman Tim Burchett. I'm still coordinating with his office to figure out when to speak to him.
Yeah,
cool.
I'll get you through, and to some other ones as well. Because I think
cool. Because awesome. I appreciate it. Because it is sensitive information, right? Because I have details of area, assets, things like that. And so I didn't know this, but Dr. Stephen Greer, he gave me information, and he consulted with me or advised me that I could speak to any congressman face to face, and face to face I could speak to a congressman and provide them information that pertains to national security. He said that. And so I would even have to be careful providing details to staffers, because they might not necessarily have a need to know. And it also puts them in a precarious situation. And so I would speak to them. I have to speak to him face to face, or speak to any congressman face to face about that.
Well, we can help with that. But I'm sorry. Did you say that you spoke with Stephen Greer?
I did.
When was this?
So his his assistant reached out to me through his X profile about, I think it was like 2 days after. It was the day before I summoned the Secret Service with a few of my X posts. And I mean, I was scared. Not Dr. Stephen Greer didn't scare me.
No,
I did
know.
ask him how he's. I asked him how he's still alive, given the work that he's doing.
For protection.
Yeah, he's awesome, and he gave me the information about how to blow the whistle. How to give, who to give the details to avoid any national security risks that might include, as well as to avoid breaching security protocols. And he told me you can speak directly to a congressperson about that information. And obviously, because it is sensitive information, it's classified, I would do that face to face. So I'd go wherever they are to give them the information they need.
Interesting. And a lot of people are talking about Stephen Greer, for a multitude of different reasons lately. Not just because of the Green Beret situation, but I do want to kind of dig into that. Do you think that they reached out to you, one, because of who you are and obviously what you're saying, but two, because of his potential connection with Whistleblower? Because apparently, this is, I don't know how true this is, again, but apparently he was among the group of Green Berets that were talking to Greer. And I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but maybe, I don't know if you have any more information on that that can help.
They, what he was saying was taken out of context. It was taken, and then people ran with it that Matt Livelsberger was one of his whistleblowers. He wasn't one of his whistleblowers. He doesn't know of Matt Livelsberger. It was just that what he was blowing the whistle on is in connection with things that Dr. Stephen Greer was having his people come out to blow the whistle on. It's not that Matt Livelsberger personally was.
Okay. Okay, that makes more sense, and because I think people really do, and you'll see with the longer that you're a part of this community, that Greer isn't necessarily someone everyone loves, and there's a multitude of reasons for that. Is it valid? Is it warranted? I don't know. Maybe, but people like to, in this community, they choose a side. It's factionalism at its best. You're either for this person or against this person. There's no middle. I stay in the middle because I made my own middle. But people love to misquote Greer and say these really terrible things about him. I think he's honestly a genuine person. And I don't think that he is. I think he's someone that is on the side of disclosure. And I don't think there should be any choosing, oh, you either follow Elizondo or you follow Greer. It's one or the other. And that's that's been a very core problem in the UFO field. The community is that it's this game that you have to pick a side, and it's been happening for forever, and it's keeping us from advancing the situation. Divide and conquer. And that's the tactic that's been used against the UFO community, it seems, and it's working.
Yeah, and I'm not too familiar with the details of the tension or the factions, but I have contact with both. I mean, we don't talk often; they're busy, but I have contact with both Lou Elizondo and Dr. Stephen Greer, and people are it's not a side. I like them both.
Yeah. They both have their qualities, and it's just reminiscent of, and this is more just philosophically speaking. I think in the UFO community, what a real challenge, a real hurdle that we have is that it's the story of the Tower of Babel, right? Humankind, or humans, we reach the top, we're struck down, and we're divided by language, borders, nationalism, down to the color of our skin and the language we speak. We like to section people, right? It's And I think at its core is what is keeping us from achieving anything that we want. Because I think a united human race, like a literal united human race, there's nothing we couldn't achieve. There's nothing that we couldn't do if we all were working together. But, unfortunately, that's not the case. And, the reality is what the reality is. So I want to talk about some more of your own experiences, like your own personal experiences. So maybe we can get into that now, if you wouldn't mind, obviously sharing.
Sure. So I get back from Qatar, right? And yes, I've had anomalous experiences, but I didn't put the pieces together from my early childhood and even from tech school when I saw UAPs or bizarre, anomalous aircraft or something, in the sky. I didn't put all the pieces together. Really, like my first confrontation with anything of the phenomenon was through my processing of mission reports in Qatar. But even then, right, I was in Qatar until May 2021. I got back. I had an internship with special operations at DIA for a bit. And so I was focused on national security. I really didn't care about the UFO thing anymore. Like I was done. I was mainly focused on the US China, being a China focused intelligence analyst, having spent time in China when I was younger. It was an issue that was personal to me. So doing mainly really focused on like learning more about on my own about China. And then I started my first semester at Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service with my Master of Science in Foreign Service. And it was in Georgetown where I was going to take a step back from an operational capacity so that I could really deep dive into like the root cause of issues. Really, I'm buying time to really dive into things and also advance myself intellectually so that I was better prepared to enter back into the national security or foreign policy space. Anyway, finished my internship, started Georgetown at the end of August. And then in September of 2021, I start to have a variety of a series of realizations about human nature, tribalism, history, things like that. I'm taking core courses at the time. So I'm taking a history of globalization course, which goes really all the way back to like the Silk Roads. And then it goes a little bit forward into when European became a global power.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I'm having like rapid fire realizations back to back to back. And really, it's starting to destabilize me mentally because it was just like a lot of truths that were just revealing themselves. And I remember Freedom Papers. Freedom Papers was one of the pivotal books for me. Freedom Papers follows a family. I forgot their last name, but a family. They trace their lineage all the way from when they were taken as slaves from Africa. And what happens to this particular family is that they intermarry, interracial marriage. And so obviously the last, not the last one, I don't know, I think maybe they still have family, Tingent family. The last girl, it was like in the maybe 50s, I can't remember. It was in the 20th century. She looked, and this is, it boils down to also my understanding of identity politics as it impacts everything going on today. But she was white passing and she didn't look black. And she basically was targeted about for something that happened. And she was mad. She was mad because there was racism back in the day. She was pissed and she was basically, I don't know if she was suing or something. I can't quote the book directly. Really, what this realization of her identifying as black but looking very white, and then people being confused, like white people being confused that she identified as black because they didn't know she was black, was kind of like the ultimate realization of a series of things for me personally, because a lot of people don't know I'm part Asian and I don't look Asian at all. But I've had like a really interesting time of being criticized for trying to like Asian pass or something. I don't know. This happened to me before. And this is why identity and like tribalism and all these things are really weird. But what happened with the Freedom Papers book is that it was like a mirror, and I was seeing how nuanced and complex and ethnic groups, identity, and it was like I pierced through something. I don't know. But anyway,
It brought you to a state where, because I've kind of gone through something similar, and like, because you said it earlier, like you start thinking like, am I losing my mind? Like, am I crazy? What's happening to me? But I think it's just like it's that notion being broke. It's your reality is breaking, like what you previously thought, because there's a time before and a time after, right? And I don't know, it just becomes a little bit more clear and easy to talk about and to talk in reference to. But it sounds like you're going through that while doing this.
Yeah, and when we look at from like a categories or like from category theory standpoint, it's like, what does my attention to her identity or perceived identity have anything to do with foreign policy or national security?
Right.
And so this is where everything starts to break down for me. And then suddenly I have this urge to look up consciousness. I have these like feelings of imminent nuclear war. It was just like suddenly things started to converge for me. And then this is what happened. As I'm having these realizations and my mind is breaking from reality, and I'm aware of that, is I asked myself the question. It's kind of funny in hindsight, but I started to recall the UAPs in Middle East, because you reach a point where you're like, I feel like these are histories repeating with human beings. And then I started remembering what happened, what I saw in the Middle East. And then I remembered Tom DeLonge, and they said they were around nuclear facilities. And it was the first time I asked myself, I said, I'm surprised we haven't killed each other. Like, there must be extraterrestrials. I genuinely considered it, and I kind of raised my eyebrow. And that's where it all started.
Kind of floods back, or floods to.
It was like the second I asked that question, it's like, you ask, you shall receive. Yeah. Oh yeah, I did. And that's where I lost I was like, I'm losing my goddamn mind, because weird things were happening. I've talked about them before. And then I was, I'm like, I clearly am needing mental health help, right? Like, I'm consciousness. I'm all of a sudden, I'm way, I'm in the esoteric right now, right? I'm not doing my studies, national security, foreign policy,
you can't focus on it. It's like something's pulling you a different way, and you're like, I want to just do what I want to do and be normal, or do my normal thing, but something's pulling me this other way.
Yes, and well, that was my conscience, because I'm like, I'm clearly sick, so I'm gonna go get help instead of trying to. I need to make sure I'm healthy before I even go further with all of this, especially because my mind is breaking. I'm having realizations, and they're sound realizations that still stand to this day. It was just the consciousness and aliens. That was where I said, okay, I need to go get help. And that was the day I spoke about this on Amy Baker's Good Morning UFO. Hello, Amy.
Yes.
And I was driving to Georgetown. I'm like, I'm going to go get mental health help. And that's where I saw U.S. government vehicles. And then I felt this urgency to follow them, because I also simultaneously know I'm crazy. I feel crazy, recognize it. But I'm also like, well, they're going to have nuclear war, and I have to tell them, although I had no evidence for it, I just felt like I had to warn them. And so when I'm weighing everything, I said, well, if I go tell them about nuclear war and I'm crazy, then at least I told them about the warning that I feel. And then I also can, and then we can all agree I'm crazy, and then at least I get it off my chest. That was the feeling, right? I'm like, my priorities are still, I want to make sure I get this information out. I felt like it was that important.
About imminent nuclear war.
It was like I was breaking from time and space. This is a symptom of psychosis, right? Like your spatial temporal, like I'm becoming like disconnected.
Dissociated.
So
Yeah.
so I'm actually, it's like time is accelerating, right? At this, so I'm it's imminent feeling, meaning like that imminent fight or flight feeling. However, it's not like, oh, it's about to happen tomorrow. It was just like, once you have a realization and you connect the dots, don't you have to go and give that information to someone where you're like, aha, I figured it out. Let me go get that to someone. Better now than never, right? Now or never. That's kind of the
okay, so that's
perspective I was operating from.
Okay, so that's interesting, I would say. Did you go get checked out cognitively?
I have had many.
What did they say?
So, okay, so when I went to the hospital, that's where I had someone from the US government. I don't know who. I can only presume it's from one of these programs who basically said, like, informed me that it was ET contact. And I didn't trust them because, frankly, they've done a lot of things that make them untrustworthy, like MK Ultra, like the fact that they even knew I was having ET contact. Like, how do you know? You had to be spying on me. You had to be looking at my Google search history. Like, how did you bring me to this location?
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm like, yeah, you guys are you guys are doing what Snowden said you guys do. So obviously, I'm still thinking that it's plausible that the US government has tried to make me into an MK Ultra sleeper cell or something. But once I was shoved out of the government by my experiences and my realizations, and my clearance is definitely under investigation, and now I'm on some FISA watch list because what I said on my post.
Which
I'm like, I'm no use to the government. So I'm no use to them. So no, I'm not a MK Ultra sleeper cell because, well, first of all, what they're doing, I'm not participating in they're in mass psychosis. So there's no way in hell I'd participate and be like, yeah, sign me up for some sleeper cell thing. They are lost. They are like I don't know where they are. They're in Wonderland.
Well, they're in their own reality, is what it is. They operate in a it's metaphorical different world. That's it. So okay, so I'm a little. I kind of maybe I missed something here. So during when you're doing the mission report stuff, right, and you're filing the mission reports, but and then between that and then this, where it kind of sounds like this might be a Richard Doty kind of situation, right? I don't know if you know what the name Richard Doty is, but he worked for Air Force Office of Special Investigations, and they were tasked to. Doty was tasked because this guy Paul Benowitz had basically tapped into the classified whatever, and had picked up some information, and Doty was sent out, and basically their idea was, okay, we're gonna tell this guy he's talking to aliens, and he found proof of aliens, and we're gonna let him believe that. Because we want to hide what he really saw is some sort of unacknowledged special access program. Maybe I don't. Do you think there's a possibility that something similar is happening to you, or did I miss something?
There's a possibility that a program wanted to throw me off course because they want to hide a black program. That's plausible. I'm not even going to put it past them, because the bottom line is, and I could sit here and provide you a lot of evidence and proof that the US government they're getting ragdolled by China. Ragdolled because they don't understand. So I was and I am a good analyst. I understand like the whole picture when it comes to US China and how private sector organizations can be exploited, going back to like non-government organizations, academia, which vectors, which vulnerabilities within society that China is leveraging. Not just China, frankly, it's all adversaries. It's really a program for play in the United States at this point. Like if you are able to get them while they're young, so kids in school or in college, right, who are impressionable and naive and grew up in a system and don't understand how the real world works, you just implant some kind of idea and then you can exploit that in the future through branding, ESG, DEI, anything. And so you can really, it's like neurolinguistic programming too. But yeah, like, I mean, China is doing this. They know our Gen Z better than the US government does, because if the US government knew anything, they would have never banned TikTok in the first place. And then I heard people say we should put like an anti-propaganda film before they open TikTok. I'm like, okay, 1984. Okay, Big Brother.
Right.
Good Lord. I'm like, guys, like who's become China to fight China? Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
live. So you're either the hero, you either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain, right?
Exactly. So, sorry, go ahead.
So it seems like, we're almost in that kind of situation where, like, we've been the hero, World War I, World War II. Even after that, through the Cold War, there's a very big sense of patriotism and nationalism, and especially in the United States. But things kind of take a turn. And, once we're, getting to the Vietnam era, people are really like, dude, this is bullshit. Like, we have no reason to be doing what we're doing. And we have no reason to want to do this. Like, it's barbaric. It's inhumane. But it seems like this for-profit industry exists where, war is a racket, literally. And it's literally a racket. And it's a money-making, operation at the end of the day. And people think it's gone away because there's no like breakout war. Well, it's just all through proxy wars now. And, we're living in an era. And think about this, and I'm going to get your take as an analyst. How the fuck are we living in a world where the only thing that's keeping us having this conversation is mutually assured destruction? It's mad, literally. How is that? I won't kill you because we don't want to end the world. This is
well, I like instead of it getting to that, well, if we really want to kill certain people, I mean, traffickers, right? Like people who are predator psychopaths. Yeah, let's take them on head on. I'm all about MAD for them specifically, but for all of us, I'm like, I'm not sure. MAD is really just like, you have to really pay attention to where you are, what your environment, what game you're playing, right? If you don't want to die. That's what MAD does. US and China are not on they don't have to be on a path of MAD. That MAD, that zero-sum mentality is forged by their environments, by China's history with the West, with colonialism. A bunch, history informs that, and also the system that we grow up in and the things we believe in. Yeah. It's not a mutually assured destruction situation. However, there's news that China is building underground bunkers and like a hardcore C2 node, which is like command and control node for their whole military underground in Beijing.
So something like Cheyenne Mountain, for instance, like continuity of government kind of thing.
Yes. And so that's not a good sign that they're looking at what's going on right now from what the US government looked at Russia or Soviet Union through the Cold War lens of like MAD.
Good point.
Yeah, and so that's interesting.
So I not to cut you off there. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting, But part of the thing, part of what really flagged me with your story and your post. So you posted when this whole Livelsberger thing was going on. You put, sorry, that's the email. You put this up, and so this was the tweet, right? Or what do you call it now? An X, a tweet? A post? I don't know what it is, but so this is your words here, right? And I want to go to, and I just want to show people that that you kind of blew the whistle that day, and that's because of this and what was going on with Sean Ryan. Now, something that's spoken about in this email, which I feel like is more significant than what people are, or at least it's more significant and demands attention, is that there's this, because David Grush alluded to this kind of like secret Cold War going on between countries to reverse engineer craft of unknown origin or non-human intelligence. And when they were doing that show where they're talking about this email, they didn't know what USAP was. And I was screaming at the thing. I was messaging Sean's his manager. I don't know what you want to call it. But Livelsberger is saying that he worked alongside the task force and had a top secret compartment, TT, whatever, the secret clearance. I can never say the letters correctly. And had the UAP USAP access. So you specialize in China. Is this Cold War? Do you think that that's actually going on? Something with reverse engineering and anti-gravitic technology?
Honestly, even what's happening with our two countries right now is also arguably a Cold War. Like the black programs don't change that fact. And yes, so if you look at a little bit of our history with Operation Paperclip and the Nazis, JPL and all that stuff, or I forgot whatever his name was, whoever like American scientists were consulting with Operation Paperclip. There you go. Chen Shui-sen was a Chinese rocket scientist. He was a genius, and he worked and he consulted and he was involved in those programs. Something happened with McCarthyism around that time period, and our government just kicked him out, which is really, it's unbelievable, frankly, because they had someone who worked on high-level programs from China, and they put him back in China because of communism. So he helped the Chinese Communist Party, the PRC, develop their rocket force, and also their nuclear program. And he was very interested in what he coined or termed the somatic sciences, which is basically psi. He was interested in psychic and psionic capabilities of human beings.
Well, isn't that an interesting connection as well? So, I guess what Livelsberger talks about. Did you see anything that could confirm that there is some sort of Cold War about specifically about reverse engineering, non-human intelligence craft, or whatever they are, because I don't even know if the craft is the right word for them.
Yeah, so from any normal person, or I'm not trying to say I'm not normal, but like any person who's looking at the email from mainstream who is not working in the US-China issue, didn't have NHI contact, things like that, it looks like it's very chaotic, right? I don't personally know if he worked on UAP-USAT. Frankly, if I had something serious to report and I felt like I had to get their attention so I could report something, I would say it. I would be like, yeah, let me throw that in the end, right? Because I spoke to some people and they said that they didn't find him some people from like the UAP task force and stuff, they said they didn't find Matt Leibelsberger's name in any of the USAP UAP databases or whatever. You know, and that could, even if he was, it could have been deleted. Who knows? Like, who knows what was going on? All really what I see in that email, they really kind of converged, the same kind of convergence that I had, which I actually can speak to the China issue. You know, some of the stuff was arguably wrong, right? It wasn't exactly correct that we have Chinese drones. They were New Jersey. I mean, it depends, right?
I mean,
it could be a free for all.
Good point. Do you think that there was something going on with that?
So there was one drone that I saw that had very Chinese characteristics, and characteristics in like the way that China like manufactures its own. However, we can also have things that are called false flags. So, or maybe not even intentional. It also could be that we procured a Chinese drone and we're flying it. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean it was China. It's kind of sad, but it's kind of funny if, like, imagine if it was US and China just operating, just like the spy balloon that we saw. Like, maybe, you know, then the question is why? Like, why is that happening? Right? Like, why, if we have to just look at things rationally, but also appreciate that we don't have the evidence or proof for any of it. But if I'm seeing a drone that has Chinese characteristics, and then I see the chief of Homeland Security, being Mayorkas at the time from the Biden administration, going on CNN saying that we need to expand the national security budget. And then at the same time, you have the National Defense Authorization Act being passed or forced through by Congress, which was like stacked. Remember, like, that was ridiculous. Fluffy.
It was literally the biggest like, stack of paper I've ever seen on a because Nancy Mace like put out a picture. And I had like just met with her a couple days before it, and she put it out. It was just like, it was so big. Like, how could you need 200 staffers to get through that in the time that they allotted? It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's on purpose. It's money laundering.
Of course.
And then if you go into it, there's a lot of fluff. It's if it's not specific, well, no wonder why the DoD failed its auditing. Like, if they're not being specific, there was one part which I actually pulled up the actual the whole NDAA. You can find it online. I pulled up the original one that was really long, and one part had something that wanted to allocate budget for, quote, energetic materials.
Energetic materials?
That's not specific. It's not specific. How do you have oversight over something like that if it's not specific? Because what's energetic? I'm energetic after coffee in the morning, right? Like, what is energetic materials, guys? How are you auditing that?
Do you think that could also be a tool? And I'm saying this, you know, legitimate, right? But, you know, for the same reason they changed UFO to UAP, right? And they did that, and Hillary Clinton accidentally told people on Jimmy Kimmel, and that's how it got out. But they did that so that when people would FOIA stuff and use UFO, they could be like, well, we don't have that because they're called UAP now. So like they play this acronym game where they, you know, change words so that it's like legal loopholes. Do you think that could be why, or at least part of why they use really unclear terms like energetic materials, which could be you after a Starbucks coffee?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's because, and this is another thing that I've always been interested in is there seems to be, again, we talked about this off air and during this connection to our nuclear arsenal, our nuclear capabilities, nuclear energy, not just nuclear weapons, but nuclear just in general. Obviously, you know, there's a correlation in data going back to the creation of the nuclear weapon and the Trinity test site, that UAP incidents, you know, exponentially grew in and around areas where nuclear technology was or was going to be, weirdly enough. what do you think is going on there? Are they monitoring us, or because as an analyst, you're trained to kind of, like you said, you're an all-source analyst. You see a big picture. When you're looking at this topic and you see the correlation between the nuclear stuff and UAP, what is your analysis of that?
I
Do you
can
think-
only use myself. I can only go based off myself and my realizations working in national security, and why I had contact. And unless other people are having contact and then coming to similar, or even just coming to similar realizations, what I learned, or what I started to pay attention to after I had contact, is that yes, we have oversight, because the people don't have oversight over human affairs. Something else has oversight over human affairs and understands human behavior, and how certain people work in their self-interest, and they can justify things, right? The world's not clear-cut good and evil. There's also a spectrum with most, it was gray for most of it. And that if we all speak to each other and don't really feed into tribalism, but more feed into trying to understand and relate to people, especially people we don't agree with or don't see things eye to eye with, we can actually start to see or put ourselves in people's shoes and then realize, okay, well, we can work backwards. Where can we build consensus? And really, this is where the whole idea of the free market comes from. Capitalism wasn't invented by Europe. Capitalism coined what was already happening with human transactional behavior, and then formalized an institution for it. That's what capitalism did. So why am I bringing that up? Well, people from different places who spoke different languages were able to come together and engage in a positive sum. Well, arguably, it depends. Transaction where they could barter for something that they want and exchange value in that way. And that just shows in itself that there really is no reason at an individual level to escalate things like that, right? Like, we're not sitting here as individuals saying that I'm going to kill you because I don't agree with you, or, we usually kill each other if you're threatening my life and I have to defend myself, or you're doing something that makes me have to kill you, right? But you're putting me in a position where killing you is not like I have a table of options, and then I have all these options. I'm not going to jump and just kill you. Like, if I have all these options, right? And I'm not saying in an escalated situation, just in general, like, we're negotiating, right? All these options.
Okay.
Really, it's all or nothing when you have to get to a position of killing someone. And like that, if that doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense for it to get that far. It's really misunderstanding and people not seeing things outside of their myopic point of view that would lead us into nuclear war with China. I actually speak to people one-on-one who are, they call themselves anti-imperialists. They call Taiwan province, which in and of itself tells you this person supports one China policy, that Taiwan is not a country.
Right, and so that it's still part of the country China. They're calling it okay. So
you're just able to see from the language that they use where they're coming from, and there are many points of agreement on different issues that don't really touch this, but indirectly, in a way, touch on the Chinatown issue. Where if I worked in national security still, I'd probably be put on, I'm already on some list somewhere, but I'd probably be put on a list just for talking to someone who supports Taiwan being part of China.
Right.
And well, that's a problem, because then we're not speaking to each other. You have Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan, intentionally ruffling China's feathers, driving up stock prices for Raytheon. By the way, there's like a whole social media apparatus following Nancy Pelosi's stock trades or insider trading.
Well,
but look,
she's a criminal.
Like, do you like I said the first thing we can do, really, and I swear this is all we have to do, is start to recognize the corruption and the cancer from within and start to identify it. And that self-awareness, right? That not this moral posturing to the world while we have God only knows what's going on around the world. People having American passports doing shit that they shouldn't be doing, and then getting our government involved, having them sign deals, right? Having the government help broker things that are not in the best interest of world peace or in human rights. The first thing we could do is start to identify all of that and put an end to it right now. Put an end to it right now.
Yeah.
I swear, you're going to start. That's all you have to do. If someone has like a gun up, they're like, we're going to have to kill the United States. They're going to lower it a little bit. Just seeing that there's an inkling of self-awareness from our government and our country.
I agree. I think we've been king of the block too long, and it's gotten to our head a little bit. And I'm not saying that, we need to be knocked down. I'm saying that we just need to be checked. And I think, honestly, some sort of, disclosure event, a forced disclosure. I'm not talking about like the president comes out and says, my fellow Americans, we're not alone. I'm talking about like Kraft shows up over the White House, but also over, the KGB headquarters, also over Xi Jinping's household mansion, whatever he's got going on, over the globe, an unannounced visit, if you will. But I wonder if that would not be a catalyst for the only way that the world would unite or could unite is if we were, because, and what I like about the UFO topic, this is kind of weird, not weird, but you'll see what I mean. What I like about talking about UFOs and non-human intelligence and stuff, it's obviously, yes, it's awesome to explore the idea. It's fun, right? I want to believe, that kind of stuff. It's all there. But when we start talking about non-human intelligence and our place in the cosmos, what it does is it transcends nationalism, racism, sexism, genderism. I think I just used that twice. But it brings us all to like an equal level playing field, because we're all humans or of Earth at that point, right? When we start talking about non-human intelligence, well, collectively, we're the human intelligence. It doesn't discriminate, if that makes sense. So I fear that that's one of the only, Reagan said it to the UN is what is it going to take? A threat from beyond to bring us all together. And I fear that may be the only thing that could.
Well, we have a threat that comes from within human society. We have predators. We have people who are doing things that are not good. I think that we're starting to see there is consciousness is accelerating. We're heightening our conscious awareness. And let me give you an example. What we see with the hearings with Congress and what we would coin, or what we would call the old guard, they're still playing by the game that they grew up in, but we're seeing what they're doing is they're working on behalf of themselves and their self-interests at the expense of what is true and what is right. See how even Bernie Sanders, who was still, held in high esteem by a lot of people, especially anti-establishment Gen Z who don't like Trump, and RFK Jr. is the epitome of what Bernie Sanders says he stands for. And then the way that he went after him. Yeah. If you really stood for what you stood for, you would not be going after RFK Jr. in the manner with which you went after him, because
That was so
RFK
weird,
Jr.
too.
has character. He is character, and it's evident that it's self-evident that he stands for what he truly stands for. And then they try to get him on racism because he said we have to look at different things with, you know, genetics and like also race and genetic. That all plays a role because we all have genetic lines, and this goes back to haplogroups of like where maternal lines come from. This is not racist. It's awesome. It's awesome. And it helps science, right? If we all were like the Greys, if we all looked like one, and I'm not trying, I personally, you know, my contact with a particular group of Greys, and I
would like to get into that in a moment, by the way. So
I'm not like trying to like say anything about like, you know, it's not negative, but I mean, I'm just saying that we have biodiversity on Earth, and when you like, it's awesome, and we need to pay attention to it. And they couldn't, though. The point was a woman couldn't get, I forgot her name. She couldn't get RFK Jr. on racism because it's so clear that he's not racist. So she called him dangerous instead.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's absurd. It really is. It's all of it, all the political stuff. It's so laughable at this point. And I the geriatrics need to. I mean, we didn't slow down and keep the, you know, I hate to say it, we didn't slow down and keep the horse and buggy companies alive because, you know, that's tradition. No, we changed and we went to the automobile industry, right? We adapted and we overcame and we moved forward collectively. And right now it's like we can't do that anymore. Because everyone wants to be the victim. Everyone wants to, everyone just wants to play the blame game and poor me and poor this and that. And, you know, I'm not successful because of everybody else and keeping me down. It's getting a little old. And I'm tired of it.
It's dangerous to have an external locus of control, as if you don't have control or agency from within. And we don't have to go into it too much, but I actually have this is what has to happen. Going back to how we're taught history and America is always the hero. There was a lot of bad stuff happening at home. Racism, segregation, women, you know, there was a lot. The way that Black and Jewish veterans were treated in minority groups in the military during World War II, it was like you're fighting your enemy next to you, fighting next to you against the enemy, and then you're fighting the external enemy. And there is some problem that I see that's keeping people divided on the right and left, and it's the fact that, you know, the thing that the left got right in the schools, but that the rest of the world missed, and this is where we're starting to see this reactionary cycle occur, is that they were teaching the truth of like the depravity of human history within the United States. The United States is not this like white knight throughout history that we were taught at a young age when we would watch like World War II and things like that, that it's, you know, it's as dark as human nature gets dark. And so there was a course correction happening, and this tends to happen within like the social sciences, a course correction. So they will like try to teach lessons from and teach human history, teach like the horrors. The problem that we're seeing is that they're also trying to create the solutions. And to be honest, they wouldn't be manufacturing new social constructs to organize society because their assumptions are predicated on like a half truth, a partial truth of the whole situation. And so you see like critical race theory, you see like DEI, you see all of these things trying to course correct, but you can't manufacture it, especially if you've been groomed through a system and you only have a myopic lens of the whole of human condition. The Constitution, the free market, the Constitution and the free market are paramount to making way for the emergent property of truth, of people not being co-opted by power, but the emergent property of a decentralized hierarchy.
Okay.
And that Elon Musk presents an example of that. I mean, Elon Musk just saved our election, pretty much like saved our election.
Arguably, yeah, people love to hate that guy now. I've always just liked him. There's something about him that just, I don't know. Like, say what you want about the guy. He's entertaining.
He's a little difficult. I think he's a little bit, he has his things, and I'm only saying that assuming that Adrian Dittman is him. Because he can be a little bit, but you can't expect it. People hold people to like a Jesus level or a God level archetype, they're people at the end of the day. And I could see from certain angles, just like with myself, because I'm not God, I'm not Jesus. I can't, if you're holding people to a high pedestal, they're gonna get destroyed. They're not gonna meet that, and that's a good thing, because we need something higher than the highest good, and we can't even define it because we have to have something to climb towards. I believe that, and I got that a little bit of that from Jordan Peterson.
Great person. Oh my God. Okay, so you had mentioned the Greys earlier, and so how did they play a role in your story? I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, but I'd like to hear it, all of it. Start wherever it needs to be.
Yeah. So I kind of put all of it away, but going back to when I had my first adult conscious contact, or just first conscious contact that I can remember, this was fall of 2021. I just inherently know. I don't know, I know there are many different kinds of ETs or NHI, but I saw the Greys.
Like, now,
and
we're talking, I just want to make this abundant. We're talking, you say you saw them, your own eyes, physical, like your waking conscious body, or your conscious awake self. You're saying you saw them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. All right, continue.
Yeah, I woke up and I saw them around my bed, and this was a couple months after I was notified of contact. And actually, these guys looked a little different than the Greys that I personally know. The Greys that I know look like taller a little bit.
Okay,
the ones I saw were small, so they were new for me. The Greys from my childhood are tall. They're the ones that are still with me are tall.
Okay, and so I just want to make this distinction, because there are the lore, or the history lore, if you want to call it that. It does describe that there is like such thing as like they call it the tall Greys, and then like the smaller ones are, whatever, they're just the Greys. But because when we're small, like I've gone back and I've gone to my elementary school, and what seemed very large to me when I was a kid now seems super small and tiny. So are you making a distinction that for a fact they were different in height, or is it just maybe perception? Could it be, or were these things definitely different? One was tall, one was small.
That's a really good question. And I thought about it. It could be the relativity aspect of it, that when I was younger, of course, everything was tall. Like 5 feet was tall. I would have been tall in my eyes back then, and I'm small. And then when I saw them when I was, in fall of 2021, I'm still kind of short, but like they looked small. Like I remember them taller, and that could be the case.
Okay, all right. Maybe that, maybe it's a mute point, but okay. So, so set the scene for me and bring me back there with you when it happens. You're in your bed. Oh, that got weird really quick. So you're in your bed. I want to say bring me back there, but that sounds weird. But like, I want to be there with you. So,
Okay.
set the scene.
Okay.
So
So I'm sleeping in bed. I woke up and I see like a light, right? Like it's like a I just see it looks like I feel like I'm on like a operation table, but I'm in bed. I know I'm in bed. And I see a light like over it, and then I see like four of them over here. And I know that there's more, but I see just like four right here. And then I'm scared. So I try to like cover my eyes, and it looks like they're at the end of my bed, right? So I'm looking up and I'm scared. I'm laughing because I might have made some noise like 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 I'm just like really
like a noise, like you're like, oh God, I thank God nobody heard that.
yeah, like I'm like no, don't do it. Like it's like sounds like I'm like whatever. I'm like no, and I'm like no, please. I'm like no. So I try to bring my hands up, and then I couldn't move my hands. I was paralyzed. So I'm paralyzed, and I it felt like I had phantom limb, right? Because phantom
Right.
limb is when you lose a limb and you still feel like you have sensations of itching or so you feel like you still have it. I felt like I had phantom limb, but it was like obviously I have all my limbs. I just couldn't move them. But it feels like my hands are able to cover my eyes. So I feel the sensation and the old just that comfort of feeling like I can cover my eyes was like it didn't bother me about the paralysis aspect. And then boom, once I close my eyes, a black and white, literally similar to what you had in the beginning at the trailer, or the intro, a black and white mushroom cloud, like dropping a test bomb, a nuclear bomb, and then that mushroom cloud came into my just the vision popped in my head. My eyes are closed, so it popped up in my mind, and then they physically hurt me. Like they started to electrocute me. It felt like I was gonna die. Like it was utter pain. So simultaneously, nuclear imagery and then physical pain, and
Accompanying it or separate?
simultaneously.
What the fuck? All right.
Like I felt like I was being punished and punished for maybe nuclear war. Like I don't know. That was the first thought
Like
that
the
popped in my
ultimate-
mind.
Yeah, like the ultimate haptic feedback, right? Where it's like, we're gonna show you, but we're also gonna make you feel it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's got to be terrifying. And there are these common themes that we tend to see, and it's again this telepathic connection, and then it's almost like a warning of technology, and it comes in various forms, but so that you're seeing, and you're obviously up to speed, and your job and what you do, you see a mushroom cloud and you are like, this is what I know what it is. Like, I know what this is. This is a nuclear weapon going off.
Yeah, and but for me, when they flashed the mushroom cloud, the physical pain was painful, but my concern, I was like, how do I stop it? Like, okay, like because I felt responsible. I don't know. I felt responsible for that. Maybe they wanted me to feel responsible, but I was like, okay, like how do I stop it? Like I didn't really care about the pain as much as preventing nuclear war, which is I don't know.
Okay, that's I want to pull at that thread a little bit. So, how does the experience end? Is it kind of like you wake up, it's the next day, or does it just kind of like blackout end? How does this experience end?
So right after that, physical pain, nuclear mushroom cloud, blacked out, and then I woke up next to my bed and I was looking up and I wasn't scared this time. I felt I felt a little helpless, but like a baby with that curiosity. And I'm looking up next to my bed, and they're looking over me, and they look over me. I'm staring at them, blacked out again, woke up in bed, woke up screaming, grabbed my husband, and I'm like, it's like 3 a.m. And he's obviously he's getting panicked because he's like, what's going on? I never had night terrors or anything like that. And I could still hear. It sounds like and I have no way of describing it. It just sounds like I'm either in like a submarine or like a ship. Like I'm in some like cylindrical, like there's a weird sound, kind of like a vibration sound. And so I'm freaking out because I know at that time, I feel like they're still there, and that I could like hear them. And that was that was a scary.
Unnerving.
So I was back to being scared again after the second part of my experience, where I'm laying in the ground, not scared, back to being scared when I woke up.
Okay. So, but by the way, so when you're in your bed, I want to assume, but I don't. Is your husband sleeping next to you?
Yes.
So he doesn't remember any of this.
He remembers when I woke him up, but he was asleep when I saw them.
That's what I'm asking. So he's out, and because this is another thing that like, so Whitley Strieber has this happen. So a lot of experiencers, it's almost like they like shut the other person off or something, and then do what they do. But so he doesn't claim to have had contact the same way you do, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you tell him, what's his response to all this and everything, like all of it?
He's interested in the like the UAP and like all of this stuff. But he, like myself, we both thought maybe I was sick.
Okay. And yeah, I guess I don't want to pry too. I don't want to pry too much.
No, I mean, at this point, I mean, it's been, I was having trouble mentally contending with all of this.
It's a heavy burden.
Yeah. So I was having trouble contending with all of it, especially with this idea that nuclear war was my fault, right? Like I logically it didn't make sense, but that feeling was still there, that burden. And so I was having mental health issues after I had my conscious contact experience. But what happened was that I got better. I started getting better, but I was still having contact. And so right now it's been, it's 2025, January. I'm better. And by the way, I'm not on any medication, and that's important because I tried different medication, just to make sure, even though I knew I was having contact, but just to make sure, maybe it's not contact.
Right. I'm sure they
didn't do
talk to
anything
you about like, okay, they probably, if anyone was diagnosing you, they'd be like, okay, this is sleep paralysis, take this med and this med and this med, like the pharmaceutical companies do and incentivize. Yeah, but that's a different story.
Yeah. And so, like even after having the conscious contact, I'm thinking, well, it really is crazy. I'm at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service. I've invested a lot into my career. If I can just take a pill and make it go away, because I didn't have, I didn't understand, and it's a lot and it's crazy, right? It's crazy to come out and say I had ET contact. Which is why I didn't confide in anyone besides people in my inner circle.
Right.
Anyway, so I said, if I could take a pill, I don't care what it is, I'm going to take it and I'm going to continue on my journey. And so I did everything right in that way, right? And got a thorough diagnosis from a psychiatrist, an MD. I went to different kinds of therapy, did it all, and it didn't do anything. I took like what they call the Ferrari of antipsychotics. I took it. I said, screw it. Like it's like $1,500 a month. I didn't pay for it. I got a trial from my doctor at one point because I was willing to put this to rest, take a pill and just continue and ignore it. And it's a Ferrari, like I said, it's called Resulti, Rexulti. And I took it for about a month, right? Because you need to let it, you need to let it settle in, antipsychotic. Nope. I took it. And then there was one day, like a couple weeks later, where I said, I'm not having any experiences. And I breathed because I don't care if I'm taking this, right? I don't need to go tell the world I'm taking antipsychotic. Although I do have to tell intelligence eventually.
Someone asked it in the comments. I was going to ask, for your job though, do you have to tell them?
You do. But okay, so they have another problem in national security. The US government has to deal with a lot of problems. One of the problems that they have with the intelligence is that people don't tell, because your clearance goes under re-adjudication, and you, like, if you don't want to risk your career and you know you're getting help and doing what you need to do, you're like, I don't need some random no name behind a screen taking my clearance away. Like I don't even know who works there, right? Like, I don't know. So it's like Fight Club. And everyone I know from military and intelligence is gonna laugh out loud about that. It is Fight Club. It's like, don't tell, don't ask, don't tell. Like that's just how it works. And that's a problem because we have suicide problem in the military, in national security. And you shouldn't have to choose between your health, doing the right thing, which would be to tell them, and then risking having your clearance pulled away
because of what you tell them. Yeah.
This is a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a broad kind of, this isn't just the military we're talking, like pilots, for instance, if they report something, the chances of them flying the desk for the rest of their career exponentially grow. And like you said, they get, next thing you know, they get ordered for a psych eval, and they say, I saw a UFO, and shit, you're grounded after that, literally, and you will be riding the desk. And that's why.
One more thing.
Yeah, good.
And mental health is used to get out of getting in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it doesn't even, it becomes like, so what happened was, and I didn't mean to cut you off because this was insane to me. Okay. When in June 2023, we have stand down days for different reasons. It was for mental health, remedial training, which is, here's another problem. It's like a punishment, but also they'll like mask it as a mental health day. It's literally an emotionally abusive relationship with veterans, with military members, because you're now blurring the lines of punishment and mental health with remedial training. So on this particular day, all of the intelligence, Air Force ISR in the reserve, or not just ISR, sorry, it was all career fields, not just intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, which is what ISR stands for, which I was in intelligence. All Air Force reservists had like a stand down day, and we got chewed out virtually on a virtual call from the wing, or the wing is like higher, right? So like you have the base, you have like different squadrons or different units, and then you have like the higher, like, right? We got chewed out by the civilian psychologist because pilots training, right, flying their training craft, I think, on the flight line, which is very, very sensitive, obviously. On the flight line, no one can go unless you're authorized. And there's a lot of rules for that. You can't take pictures, things like that, because our aircraft and like our high value assets are out there. They took selfies. The pilots took selfies in the cockpit while they're on the runway. And they crashed the craft. And when they got in trouble, they said they had mental health issues. And the fact that the Air Force leadership ran with that, not only ran with it because they didn't do the right thing. These people should be punished, given Article 15's kicked out for even thinking that who are you that you could take a selfie in our multi-million, I don't know how much, our multi-million-dollar aircraft and
with
also
secret,
and you're
you know,
operational. You're operational. Like, you are tasked with high national security missions. You're tasked with going into areas when our ground forces are having trouble, right? So take your training seriously, but you're here taking selfies for probably TikTok,
right?
probably putting all of that classified information about the machinery and the equipment on TikTok. This has actually happened on Red Note. This actually happened on Red Note, and I actually reposted it saying, "Wow, like, wow."
Way to just
Yeah,
hand
and
over
then now
the
you're gonna
blueprints to the fucking bad guys.
yeah, right. Like, and then now you're gonna say mental health, and then your leadership, because they love pilots, they love you guys so much. They love you guys more than the right thing to do. They love you guys more than us. They decided to just run with it, saying, well, you know what? Now we're gonna scream at everyone because of select few pilots who didn't do what they're supposed to do.
Right. This is dangerous. This is I mean, that sounds borderline like crazy. Like almost like we, I think every job place kind of has it, but like if anyone's ever worked in the restaurant industry, it's just like it's like high school, right? It's high school drama. Because it sounds like this is on steroids with the military. It's just a big high school drama thing.
She's a psychologist. You want to know what she said to us?
Yes, I would love to.
She screamed at us and said, why aren't you getting help?
What?
What's wrong with you? Why aren't you getting help? Because screaming at us when we have a suicide problem, when people don't talk about it because of the BS culture that we have, and now you're going to scream at them for not getting it. So now they're just like, you know what? If they were considering getting help and then also reporting it because that's the right thing to do based on what the Air Force wants, now they're just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just not going to tell anyone at that point. I'm just going to make a decision for myself. And that's not good.
No.
That's not good at all. So that's how they deal with mental health.
And yeah, there's obviously, you know, a huge problem with how veterans and, you know, veteran care and, you know, our military spends all this money investing into someone, into their training, into every facet of their skill set. And then it's, you know, once they're out, it's like, okay, cool. Thank you. You know, and then, you know, God forbid, you know, you become a homeless, maybe using drugs, and living in a tent city. That is far too often the case. And there's a huge epidemic. Like it's a problem. And no one wants to look it in the eye and say what it is. And you're right. It's a mental health crisis. It's an epidemic. But we mask ourselves from it because we don't want to see the truth. It's kind of scary, right? in a larger picture. But back to your own situation, your own mental health. If you told the military, like, hey, if you had your experience and then the next day went to like your higher ups and you said, I saw grays at the foot of my bed, they showed me nuclear war, what happens? Or what do you think happens?
So that wasn't going to happen for me. There was a lack of understanding of priorities in the military, right? They'll sit here and we'll have suicide prevention training, and then the next session we're having sexual assault training, but they're trying to rush through it and not making sure that anything is clear about decision cycle of reporting sexual harassment. And then you have, oh my gosh, and then you have promotions for your airmen, right? Anything that has to happen with life, for some reason, the regiment that the higher ups want take priority over what is best for the mission. And so doesn't even have to get to that point. My mental health started taking a severe toll because, well, yeah, I'm having my experiences, but also because they're like not prioritizing and not doing the right thing. And I addressed issues, and I would have never told anyone about my mental health, but it got to a point where I was, well, between trying to do the right thing from a national security sense, making sure, like, even though I'm going through it, the most important thing to me is that my airmen are taken care of, and that I make sure they get the right rewards. And then I started to notice that even their evaluation cycle their metrics are messed up, because my airmen, it's like, character is fundamental. Like, I don't give a crap if someone joined some stupid booster club, right? Which is like basically like you volunteer service, and then they're slacking off in their day job, right? And they're putting all of the work on their teammates, on myself. I had an airman who would stay behind on lunch, which there are many people, and this would be traditional military, are like, yeah, like that's a given. No, it's not a given anymore. Like, their whole priorities, all with the things they look at, what they value, is like left is right, right is left. No, this airman was one airman that I said, you know what, he crushes it at what he does. And I couldn't give him a higher recommendation. And this was the day, actually, this day I freaked out. I actually freaked out. I took off from my base, which is going AWOL. My commander had to come pick me out. I lost my mind. And when she came to pick me up, and I was at, this is where I was actually going. I was going to kill myself. And I'm not saying that lightly. I was dabbling with it because of the things I was seeing from national security, from people around me, from what they're doing. They're just not doing the right thing. I'm too low in the totem pole, and it's like ass backwards. This day, this day she picked me up, and I said, well, I freaked out. And my commander, she took, I don't know why, though, it just happened. She took the heat for all of Pentagon leadership. I said that they need to figure out their shit. I said, and I realized I had to leave the Air Force because I was going to say something. And I actually was selected to commission as an officer, an intelligence officer in the Air Force. And I had worked really hard for this for a very long time. I wanted to be an officer. I wanted to be a leader because I trust myself to take care of people. I don't trust other people, which, if you work in the military, I already know it'd be an uphill battle again and again and again. I keep dying on a hill and not getting any momentum.
Right.
I'd worked this hard. I got selected. I was going to go to OTS, Officer Training School, after I graduated from Georgetown. But this took a turn, and I said, I'm going to have to leave. I said, because I'm going to go to our 4-stars fucking houses. I started cursing. I'm going to go to their effing houses, and I'm going to ask you, what the F are you doing to our people? What are you doing? What are you doing? What was Afghanistan? What are you doing? Like, what are you, why are you taking rewards when you have men who died overseas? Why do I see a goddamn medal for anything that just happened? Right?
Yeah. Not to mention,
why do I see bullshit?
The pullout was oh my God, what a travesty. It should, I mean, anyone involved in how that operation happened, or allowing it to green light that way, should be removed from their duties. It's my opinion. But
especially the ones who took a ribbon or medal for anything. I wanted to burn all my ribbons. And by the way, they hand them out like candy. I wanted to take them. At that point, I took them off my uniform. Well, I thought I was still going to stay in. The blue uniform, it's optional. I was like, I don't even want to wear them. Before, I used to, when I was like brand new, I was like, oh, like, it's awesome. I have an honor ribbon from honor graduate. I didn't even care anymore. Like, the meaning, just when I saw people getting medals for our higher ups, generals getting medals for Afghanistan retrograde, I said, this is just made in China, like a factory garbage. Like, I just threw it out. I don't even want to wear it. I'm so disgusted by seeing that people, higher ups, took medals when we had people die, when the Taliban were beating the shit out of Afghan citizens because they lost utter control of the mob.
Right. And then, not to mention, how much the machinery, the equipment, well, I forget what it was in like the number, but like somewhere upwards of like billions of dollars of like military grade equipment just left. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Who said this was this is the way we do it? We just disappear overnight and then let the Taliban pick it all up. And now, Burchett just finally the not to go off on a tangent here politically, I really don't like to, but like we're paying the Taliban on a monthly retainer. When and luckily he just put legislation through to end that, and it got through. But why? How are we funding the Taliban in 2024, 2025? Like it's
we're
absurd.
We're also funding Chinese companies. I'm sorry.
Well, there's more to that too.
U.S. aid, and we have an Africa Development Initiative. They're funding Chinese companies.
It is laughable. It's very much laughable. I mean, the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, by the way, genius, right? Deal with all the countries the United States doesn't, because let's just say that they don't agree with how the countries run, politically, and the way that the world will see it optically, decides whether the United States will do business with a country or whatever. But China's like, well, come in and we'll build your highways, and just we're gonna maybe one day have to land something on them. You cool with that? Sure. All right, sign me up. And then it's a brilliant idea, and they're taking up space in South America, Africa, all over the world. It's absolutely crazy. They're coming very close to the front door.
They are using civilian assets for military means. Like they're using their state-owned enterprises to build runways that their fighters can take off and land on. And the U.S. military, I'm laughing because the U.S. military doesn't look at the private sector. Like they divvied up everything. So China's just doing everything. And we've split the world into it's like different pieces. And we literally just we took our glasses and we just smashed them. We're like, now start to put them back on. Let's go out. Let's get after it. That's the U.S. government. Smash glasses, wear them, and then navigate reality that way.
Yeah, try to blind, see through the cracks. It's not gonna end well. You're gonna fall down some stairs. But okay, so the nuke that you saw go off, that whole experience, that kind of brought more memories back, you said, right? So how long do you think you've been contacted? And hear me out on this. Do you think that you were predetermined or kind of predestined to end up exactly where you are right now, but by design?
It's really funny that you asked that, because I literally was just thinking, I honestly, I believe that this was the life that I was supposed to go down. I was supposed to go this way. I mean, it's hard for me not to see it, because I have had contact since I was younger. And just series of different things in my life. It wasn't on my bingo card to go deep in debt at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, only to leave national security and then talking about my extraterrestrial contact experiences on X. This wasn't. Right. I would just forego Georgetown at that point. I would just cut to the chase and go on X and talk about ETs. You know what I mean? So it's hard not to say. It feels it's like an illogical path.
Okay, so well, I guess, all right, maybe let me revise that and go a little deeper. Do you think that there's a commonality in your experiences with the Greys? Like, have they been a part of your life always, like showing you, guiding you, and warning you potentially? And that is where you get all these kind of adult intuitions, like even as a kid you talked about, having these really like existential thoughts. Do you think it possibly could have been from these contact situations, and that you were part of maybe some sort of like, I don't know, initiative or whatever they seem to be trying to do by warning us individually? Because they're not like coming out and saying, hey guys, stop with the nukes. Like, they're not doing that, right? They let us launch them. They sometimes shut our bases down, shut our nukes down. They show us that they're there, right? That they're always watching, kind of like Santa Claus in a weird way. But they don't overtly say, no, we're not letting you do this. So why are they warning us on an individual basis rather than coming out and saying it? I guess that's my thought path is, like I said, you have these really existential thoughts as a kid. Could there be correlation? I think you're muted.
Sorry. So if you watch near-death experiences, the Greys are seen. So I think it was Dr. Eben Alexander, which is a weird name, Eben, right? Eben.
Yeah.
Dr. Eben Alexander said that he saw Greys during his near-death experience. And I actually separately have glimpses of before I came to Earth. I don't talk about it because it's this goes into a little bit of the spiritual and stuff like that. And I know it's still contentious, especially we have different, religions and things like that. But I have this memory of before I incarnated, and the Greys, my Greys for me are they've just part of my life since I was really young. And when I started to when I had my conscious experience and it was everything came full circle and made a lot of sense for me. I actually if we think about God and incarnations, reincarnation, right, and things like that, we could say that the higher dimensions are the ones who do override everything in the lower dimensions. And then maybe we could even argue that there is an element, I'm not speaking about all Greys, and I know people have negative experiences, but my experiences with the Greys are to help my soul stay the course that it planned or intended to stay. And I didn't want to go down actually, I didn't want to talk about this because it does go into a little bit of spiritual and people get offended. But that's what my perspective. And that's really what I feel they were with my soul.
Yeah.
They helping my soul stay on course because we can get lost.
Well, there's an argument to be said, right? That, maybe we're conflating, where the idea where religion came from are these guiding forces, right? We'll call them a guardian angel or, whatever you want, angels, fairies. Maybe the only thing that's changed is the name, right? The name that we use. But it's all the same thing. So, yeah, because you're not the first person to ever bring up, I think I might have signed up for this ride before even coming here. It's being talked about, some sort of soul contract and, reincarnate to Earth and, you bring back your experiences to the one. And yes, that is very woo. And I tend to be kind of nuts and boltsy, but that's only because I truly believe that society is going to have to be, they're not going to digest it all at once. If we go saying, hey guys, you might be taken out of your bed, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop it, right? Maybe we have to just get to the NHI exists point before we can have that conversation. So it's almost strategic, right? And how we lay it out, how we roll it out.
Mm-hmm.
I would do it.
Yeah, I think Jacques Vallée has a really good perspective, holistic perspective of
Yeah.
it that is not exclusive and all encompassing, in that we see things through our lens and through our paradigm, and that it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just through our own perspective. And then maybe like maybe it's kind of like a Tower of Babel experience, because we can only go based off of our perspective. And then like in that way, it's like we're seeing things through the meaning that we ascribe to our experiences. And meaning is really what's fundamental to language, and that maybe we take language for granted, but meaning is more nuanced and contextualized based on said experiences.
That's very well said. Very well said. So I all right. If there is one thing that you want someone listening, someone watching to take away from your experience and what you're trying to tell the people, what would that be?
Well, I honestly, like, I'm just sharing the truth about my experiences. Like I said, this conflicts directly with my reputation, especially with people who aren't familiar with the phenomenon or are not like accepting of it, who work in national security. And so it is that is in direct conflict with that. But like it needs to be discussed. And like I said, I have no proof or evidence of my personal experiences. And so it's maybe like, if you have experiences like, and then we like you compare notes, say, okay, like maybe this part, maybe this part, but I interpret it differently, or this could be like this. And then we like assign probabilities, and like, really, like, that's really like how we should go about things.
I agree.
Because I think our trust, or like our like unfettered trust in people in power, people, each other, like unfettered trust is what brought us into this mess, and we have to like climb our way out of it. So I'm all on board with us just being like putting everything in an uncertainty box. Logically, you would put my experience in an uncertainty box. And that's logical and rational, and that's nothing to get mad about. That's actually good. Like, I'm like, yeah, like put a question mark, because I don't have proof or evidence. And then just table it for when something, else corroborates an element of what I say.
No, that's a great way to say it, honestly. And the one thing one of the things I fear the most is, or maybe it's even why we need help in the first place, is it seems that the black programs, or whoever runs them, let's just say that let's call them the deep state, like everyone else. They're the face, or the face of humanity in terms of the non-human intelligence, whatever. And that scares me, because if they're coming at it with their own agenda, this military, defense, exploit for gain, profit, attitude, it concerns me, because that I don't think that's not how mankind should be represented. And I don't think the government, or any person or governing body on this planet, has a right to speak or enter us into anything as a whole. And the fact that if there is, if this is all true, if this, if aliens are actually here among us, non-human intelligence, and it is being covered up by whomever, that is I consider a crime against humanity, because that's like trying to classify if snails exist. It doesn't fucking make sense. You can't classify that. It's stupid to even try to begin to do that. So I just worry that, because we've always, as humanity, we've always just we crave subjugation, whether it's from the church, the king, right? We need someone who to follow, and that person who leverages that power seems to be the face of humanity, and it's not working in our best interest as a whole so far. I think the cover-up started with the Vatican. I really do, because I think, I mean, who was the top dog before the United States? Who ran the world? Well, the church did, right? So I think there's more to that, and I think the cover-up started a long time ago, before even the age of the nuclear weapon. But I think, these are my thoughts, my own opinions and theories. But I really do worry that the military, or someone with a military mindset, is right now dictating our communication with non-human intelligence. And that concerns me, because, are they going to tell us to turn around and say, it's a threat and we need to fight, start an interplanetary war? That would be logically the next step. Some sort of false flag, we talked about false flags earlier. There's this idea of the ultimate false flag, right? The fake alien invasion. And I worry that is actually something that's real.
Yeah. And yeah, I would even argue that the same can apply to when we have Americans engage in corruption or opium farming or God only knows what else on behalf of the US government. They are not leaving a fine mark on the US government. And so, and this would also extend to corporations who get bailed out for crimes against humanity in different countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo. I posted something like 2 days ago. So I'm taking this and applying it to human affairs, where it's like the US and China are co-signing on crimes against humanity in the Congo, right? And this goes back to who's the good guy when we were joking earlier about Black programs farming opium and smuggling opium into the United States on behalf of, quote, the good guys. And I'm like, yeah, well, it looks like we're the good and bad guys.
Yeah.
Especially you look at the population of the United States, like the more you identify with a group, the bigger the group, well, the less you know who's in that group. So if you call yourself we or like identify in any group, then you're taking on the burden of that whole group. And then you don't know who's who, like people selling out left and right and things like that, and doing things they're not supposed to be doing.
I agree. It's a fun, like I said, the division is, I think it's the ultimate weapon against society, like the global society. It's the ultimate tool that is used against us, is the social engineering of like, oh, you're Black, I'm white, we're different. It's like, no, that's not how it works. That's not, his skin is just a, and white people like to think that we were the first. We were not. We were, I guess, if you want to call it, a process of evolution, right? Because if life started where we think it started in the Middle East, the skin would have been darker, to accommodate for the sun and the intensity of it. So, I think I just think it's funny how weird how things have turned over the years. And there's this like quote unquote white privilege. So I mean, I don't know. Like world politics and all that shit aside, I do think a united humanity is something that the deep state fears, and they'll do anything to keep us fighting amongst each other so that we don't ask too many questions. Keep them.
Yeah, and people of power will become we're unpredictable if we don't fall in line with the narratives or the ideologies that they expect us to fall in line with. Yeah. I shot you a message really quick.
Yeah, so I really do want to say thank you for taking time out of your day. I know I have probably I probably have a lot more that I would like to get to, but we are at like the 240 mark. So I'm probably gonna break it here. But I think that there's a lot to be said for your encounters, and much more for you to explore. You're very new to what's going on, and you'll probably learn more in the coming years about yourself, and I'd very much like to see where that goes. So thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for your service to the country.
Thank you so much. And for everyone listening, I messaged him that I have to pee. Like I love speaking to you. This was an awesome interview. And I honestly, if you want to wait like 2-3 minutes, I just have to use the restroom. That was literally why I said I messaged you.
Actually, you know what? We'll round it out because I did have one more thing that I wanted to run by you, and it's something that I just noticed. So yeah, we'll take a 2-minute breather.
Perfect. That's
right.
Excellent. That's all I need.
I'm gonna play some music, I guess. I've never done this. Other streams do that though. They break. I just don't have a Jamie to hit pause. Oh my God, my back is killing me. Oh, damn it. That thing stayed on there. Oh, my camera's off. So, thank you. I had to switch chairs. My back was hurting. Ugh. That other chair is it's not. What the hell? Okay. So, I'll work on this little camera thing, but I'd like to ask you. So there is a oh cool, it just came on. Look, I didn't even have to do anything. There's a theory that has been posed by a guy named Michael Masters, and you actually hinted at it a little bit earlier, calling the Greys kind of like genderless, and maybe like that's where we go. We did just talk a little bit about like evolution and that. Do you think it would be probable or possible that maybe they're not extraterrestrials and that they are actually from here, just from a different time?
Yeah, so I actually if our souls come and God exists outside of space-time, right? He could see all and our souls, they come from God, they come from heaven, the higher dimensions. If we think about it, right, time doesn't exist. So what would that make the Greys? And also think about it this way too, is that if space-time is a dimension, the fourth dimension, and then there's something outside like the fifth dimension, etc. And so we look at it from that vantage point, then really everything is non-local. Everything is all at once. And then that raises a lot of questions.
It does. It does absolutely raise a lot of questions. I guess because I'm kind of just trying to loosen up now and kind of go a little deeper. What is your best guess as to what is going on in the with why do people get abducted? Why do people get their eggs taken? Do you think that there's some sort of hybridization program going on? Like, what are your takes on all those things? Having had contact yourself, which is positive, what is your take on the negative?
The negative is that there is, if we go by, by the Bible, if we go by, free will and just free will in general, then there's free will is a divine law. And that being said, we see people and we hear of ETs. I call them ETs just because of what the grays look like, and what conventionally were known as extraterrestrial in like a space-time or in a 3D framework. But if we see it time and again with each other and with people with free will, that you can also impinge on someone else's free will.
Oh yeah. Oh, of course. Because and I've always had this kind of thought that, deja vu or even things like the Mandela effect are like kind of like rips in the fabric of reality itself. Because time, like you said, time is relevant. It's a man-made like linear construction. Time is more of a force than like kind of like it's more like gravity than it is a clock on the wall, right? So
it's like cause and effect from like a linear standpoint.
Right. And it's I've been watching the series Dark, and I posted about this a couple of days ago, but it is so fucking good. And I didn't watch it originally. I love stories. I just like I love stories. I love a good story. There's something about like immersing yourself in something that's bigger than yourself. That it's like, why I like Marvel, why I like superhero stories, right? It's like the ultimate version of yourself on screen. And for a minute you get to pretend that, you're morally not corrupt, even though we're all flawed.
It's who you could be.
Right.
Also, it's like I feel like it's someone I could be that I would aspire to be.
Right.
And
I would
that's like
love to be Captain America. Like not just because Chris Evans is like a good looking dude, but his Cap's morality. Like he always does the right thing not because it's what's going to get him thanked, but it's what needs to be done. Same thing with Batman, but that archetype is something that I really love. And maybe it's because I view myself as, a little bit broken morally. And would I make the same decisions? I'd like to think I'd say absolutely, but would I? I don't know. I don't know. So I think, we're all the hero of our own story, but we're also the villain of our own story. And I can't help but think that, this contact, right? This idea of contact with a non-human intelligence, is it real? Like, is it actually real? I've seen what I've seen. I've experienced what I've experienced. I've heard what I've heard. Is any of this real? Are we in some sort of like simulation, right? Like, because that's a theory that's been prevalent lately. And I've been going down that rabbit hole, and it's like, Jesus, I hope I'm not an NPC. I really hope so. But those are the kind of thoughts that I have now. Like, I've had so many years to really like think about what I've been through, what other people have been through, and kind of connect dots. I don't know how far along you are on your journey, but it feels very limited to just think that like, all right, there's this phenomena. It's only coming from a different planet, right? I think that's a very fragmented look. And I think that's more possibility that these things are from different dimensions, that these things are from different, possibly different worlds that are just like our own.
Yeah, those are really interesting things to think about. I actually stop at like these are great thought experiments and I recognize them as it, but once I found what was really truly important to me in this lifespan, I stopped entertaining that. And that's because I can't do anything about. I can't get that information. No matter how much I like try to dig and try to figure it out, really I'll get lost. And then all that time I could have spent building, I don't know,
No, I hear you.
company or yelling at the U.S. government so that they can bring the president of Rwanda to the table and threaten him so he stops invading and torturing children in East Congo. These are things that are important to me. And so like I am like in the disclosure space, and I did like at that time when I had my initial conscious contact, I went hardcore down the rabbit hole. But then I started to learn more about child trafficking and sex trafficking and all these different things, and I was wasting time on for myself, and I said I need to focus on this because I'm trained intelligence professional, and I can save a child from traffickers. The only part I have trouble with is I don't want to play the stupid game. You can't kill people. No, I want to bring all these traffickers to an island, and then I want to nuke the island.
Bombs we have on them. Yeah, I
like just do like biowarfare tests on them, and then I would charge the U.S. military to use them as and then we use these traffickers and people who are hurting and profiting off children. We use them to test all of our nuclear and biowarfare capabilities on an island that is far remote so that it doesn't impact anyone around us. I'm going to stop there because I'm already on the naughty. I'm on the naughty list. I'm on the naughty list, and I'm going to be canceled. Even though I feel like
you're gonna get me
we all can get on board. We can get on board about the child trafficking.
No, absolutely. I listen. I'm with you, sister. I'm with you.
I'm going to get canceled.
But yeah, you gotta watch that one because you might get canceled before you ever.
I have a whole plan too. I was like, the plan started forming as I was saying it, and I'm like, I need to stop while I'm at it.
Like I said, I've similar thought experiments have crossed into my mind. What do you? So what's your take then? So as someone who's in intelligence, and you kind of like to go on evidence. And actionable intelligence, not just hearsay, or circumstantial, certain things. What is your thought on like certain aspects of potentially? Someone brought it up earlier, but like rituals, spiritual rituals, and trying to astral project, or witchcraft and that kind of stuff, like the more paranormal side of things. How do you look at that as an intelligence person?
The same way my mindset changed after my experience. Before, I would have never said any of this was plausible. In fact, I even thought debunkers were crazy for wasting time on this. That's how far removed I was. But after my experience, and the same could be said about my experience with the Greys. So I keep an open mind. A lot of stuff. I'm like, there's a lot that I don't know. Like, I don't even know what I don't even know.
Yeah, of course, that's how you have to go, right? So you don't know what you don't know. And so the final kind of what I wanted to wrap up on is, so while we started this show, we talked about a little bit about that crash. There was another crash while we were doing this, a jet in Philadelphia. It's kind of, I don't know, it's just weird. But it looked nefarious. If that's the word you want to, I don't know. I don't want to get canceled either, but so we talked about the DC crash. There's been another one though. And I'm going to try to look it up, but someone brought it up in the comments earlier. I didn't see it, but then someone just pointed it back out, and that it looks like apparently there's some video that looks like a missile hits it. Now I haven't seen this. I'm trying to look it up, but if anyone in the comments can send a link to where you're seeing this, I'd very much like to see that. Or
I
very
just
know about that.
I just looked it up. I didn't hear about this.
So what is going on? Is it just a jet on the Northeast Philadelphia? Okay.
Well, it's
I
an
got it.
F-35. It's our brand new fighter.
Oh, wow. So 6 people. Oh, yeah. Yeah, right here. CBS News. Oh, wow. So look at does this feel odd, or is it just me? Like with the DC thing and then this, does it every day just seem like a bad sci-fi movie all of a sudden? Or is it just me? Like ever since fucking Thanksgiving with the drones in New Jersey, ever since then, it's been like one bad sci-fi movie day after day. And yeah, so apparently 6 people.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what, I don't see any videos. I don't what that person was talking about where a missile hits it, but oh, maybe.
A small plane
Can you see
crash
that?
in the area of
Yeah.
North Philadelphia. And we've got Joe.
Can you hear
Joe
it?
Holden on the phone. Joe, do you have any more information about what we are looking at right now?
Yuki, I've been working my police sources, and I don't have a monitor up to see what it is you are looking at, but I do have photos from the scene. In fact, one with you if you want to take a look. It is at the intersection of what appears to be the boulevard at Rupert Street, and it is just a disaster.
Can you hear the audio?
Police sources there
Yes.
are telling me that this plane, when it came down, parts of the plane hit cars in the area. Some businesses near the Roosevelt Mall are on fire, as are some other structures. I'm racing to figure out, the extent of damage there and possible injuries. I'm hearing some grim details that we have not yet confirmed, but just from some descriptions of law enforcement on the scene, this is a devastating scenario there in Northeast Philadelphia. And if I'm just walking through some of the.
So yeah, I thought that because the person messaged me and said there's a video that looks like a missile hits it. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. But I don't see any of that video. I don't know if that person was just messing around, but that's not cool.
This is a different. This is wow. This is actually what you showed different than the F-35 fighter jet that was 2 days ago.
There's how many more? What? So planes are just falling out of the sky for a living now? This is not. Yeah. So, again, I hate. I really, 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 really hate to sound conspiratorial, because like with stuff like this, there's real people involved, right? There's like real affected people, but like I just have this like gut feeling, and I've had it for a long time, that something like the stage is being set for something bad, like some sort of false flag. And this, I've tweeted about this several times. And you kind of said it earlier. It's like you had this overarching feeling of imminent doom. You can go back to my ex profile, like go back 2 months, and you'll say there's a post that I was like, I can't help but feel that like we're on the verge of something that is going to change humanity as we know it. And it just seems like the stage is constantly now being set for something weird. And I don't know what that is.
We have to be careful, because going back to what you said after 9/11, how quickly we were willing to abdicate our freedom. What happens in this kind of scenario, or like in the 9/11 scenario, is we go into fight or flight mode. And when we're in fear mode, and we saw this during COVID as well, we're more controllable. And we are not making very rational decisions. And I want to kind of just really quick touch on something that I noticed at Georgetown University. When I was in a technology focused program, so science, technology, and international affairs. And the future that was being painted was a bleak future. You have to understand this was 2021. So we were just barely climbing out of COVID. And from the perspective of people from Washington, D.C. and the establishment, Trump painted a very dark future, And so in their eyes, so did populism. So the populism, which is unpredictable, along with high technology and the multi-pronged threat coming from different bad actors or adversaries of the United States government, all of this painted a very bleak and dark picture. So what I noticed was that when we would write policy papers, which are basically recommendations that we would make to the US government, to congressmen, on how to tackle certain problems within government, society, or even business, the picture was painted that it was a dark picture. And so you're providing a solution in a dark picture. Well, if you are painting a dark picture, you're basically saying that this future is happening, right? This future is inevitable. And you're basically looking at things from a zero-sum standpoint. And so naturally, you're more inclined to propose regulations, in this case on technology, propose regulations to control AI development and things like that. But the problem is, it goes back to the other thing I said, is that they operate within a system that was manufactured. It's basically artificial. It's man-made. The real world doesn't work like this. So no matter what regulations you put up, not everyone's following them. And we see this with the Black programs that are just even worse, right? Even worse. They're unacknowledged because they're like, we don't even want them to know because they're going to do things that are going to stifle our development, right? There are actually justified reasons in their eyes for not letting people see everything, because we're literally cutting our own legs off with all this regulation, especially when it comes to the private sector and innovation in defense and stuff like that.
So we're stovepiping it, and with that, you're never going to get the best people to be able to work on it. It's going to be who's going to keep the secret, right? Who's the narcissist that you can get that can also do the job and keep their mouth shut, right? You're not going to get the best of the best in these fields because you're going to have to compromise. When they take a polygraph test and they don't score the way you want them to, right? So, I feel like the only way this thing works, and we found on 9/11 how stovepiping information can fuck us over. And it seems like we won't learn the lesson. Like, it's I guess what they say is right? History's, those who don't learn from history are bound to repeat it. Well, prime example, United States of America, modern day United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask, if there was a global world war that starts, what do you think the most likely contenders for said conflict would be? Like, is it U.S. and China? Is it Russia, U.S.? Is it what do we look? What do you think?
What do I think? I think the transnational legacy elite have underground bunkers, or probably corporate shut. Look, assuming that the UAP, which we have seen plenty of data, and I have plenty of data, we have it. The question is, do private companies also have access to that? Are these like military companies, stripping out some of the national security components like they do with their regular fighters, right? When we sell fighters, strip down F-35s to Taiwan. Would the same thing be happening with these UAPs? So then, okay, assuming that if you have more money and basically you can buy all these things, so only wealthy people are going to be able to sustain any impact of this civilizational calamity or something like that. So what's going to happen is that the elite, the people in power, the ultra elite are going to have underground bunkers. They'll be able to survive it, and then humanity will be destroyed. So in the end of the day, it's not good for anyone.
Yeah,
it's like, what's the point? Like, why are people paying the price? Why are people paying the price for what bad people are doing? And then what would be the ultimate from like nuclear war level? China and the United States.
Right. So that you think that's the main, that would be the main vis-a-vis if it were to happen, is the U.S. and China would be the conflict. That kind of sets it off. And now in your assessment as an analyst, how likely is China to move on Taiwan? Like if they say, because Trump's not going to be in office forever, right? And let's just say that he's the only thing that's keeping it at bay right now. Because if I was China and I watched what was happening in Russia and Ukraine, I would say, guys, we can go in. We could take it right now. We could do it, right? And because we had a president who was literally like asleep at the wheel, and a vice president who was campaigning more than half the time. She had been locked in a closet for the past 3.5 years, to my knowledge, after her terrible border speeches. No one saw her until she was the nominee for president. And it just seemed like we were really vulnerable at that moment. I thought China would make the move then, but they didn't. Do you see in a future where they do make the move?
It really, this is where it comes down to our own self-awareness and decision-making. The Trump administration has really, Tulsi Gabbard needs to be appointed. I won't even entertain it. It's not controversial. It's not business as usual. Tulsi Gabbard needs to be the director of ODNI of DNI, period. RFK Jr., get them all in. Congress is going to get us into war. Congress and the establishment national security apparatus is going to get us into war. There are a lot of things that it's McCarthyism, not only with being pro-Trump, all this stuff. It's McCarthyism with even entertaining a broader perspective of foreign policy in the United States. You're suddenly anti-American. Well, to me, that sounds very, Marxist or collectivist. Oh, you can't deviate from the crowd is very collectivist.
It's dangerous. Well,
yes, it is. And China has a different view of Russia-Ukraine situation. So I wasn't trained on the Ukraine situation, but the constitution of Ukraine was changed to where it was no longer a buffer zone and it could become a part of NATO. And there was an agreement, right? There was an agreement between the West and NATO and the US and Russia, right? So that
NATO and Russia, right? So that, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think I fucked you over there. I fucked your speech, but we had NATO after World War II, after World War II and the Cold War, right? The only condition, or there was a condition that NATO could not be in a place like that's on the Russia border, right? Is it something like that?
It was an agreement that it would be preserved as a buffer zone between NATO and Russia.
Right, which we violated multiple times.
Yeah. And
so, and I'm really not, because I don't want to sound like I'm like for Putin or anything. I'm not, but the West, again, we talk about us being the hero, and that the way we see ourselves as the hero, quote unquote. But there were things in play, and it said, if you cross that line, then we're going to have a problem. And NATO has crossed that line so many times that you can't even count them all or list them all. So you kind of look at Putin and say, well, he's actually had a tremendous amount of restraint, because this could have happened many years ago when they first violated it, or however many years it was ago. And he made it good. He made it very abundant in a speech that he delivered. And he said, how would the United States like it if we went into like Brazil or South America, Mexico, and parked our military there with weapons of mass destruction aimed at the civilian population? How would you guys feel? Would that let you sleep at night? Would you feel good about that situation? Probably not. And I can honestly see what he's saying.
Yeah, and this is the other issue of viewing the situation as black and white, is that when you have a common enemy and you have an enemy that we're all groomed and, by people who grew up in the Cold War, and it goes without saying that Russia is not my friend. Like, if Russia could use me personally as a tool to screw over the government and then let me get dried up and washed out, they would, hell yeah, they would use me to do whatever they want, and then they would let whoever kill me, or they would kill me. They don't care, right? Like that, they operate like the mafia, which sounds like the CIA, if you ask me, from what we know about the CIA. But anyway, so knowing that, right, that's the situation. Now we can see, it's not just because you're seeing the situation critically from a critical standpoint, you're not pro-Russia, right? Like, you're not suicidal.
Right. Yeah.
But we see what's happening with we see what happened with Ukraine, right? They changed the constitution. We know they don't talk about it because you can't touch it. You're suddenly a Russian plant if you talk about the ethnography or like the the identity and like the nuances of Ukraine and history. And then you can also look at it from an individual standpoint. To be frank, if I was a Ukrainian living in Ukraine, I don't want to go under Russia, because now you're going to be subject to sanctions. You can't travel freely, right? You don't have that freedom of maneuver or movement as you would if you were part of NATO or just a buffer country. So
Right.
I wouldn't want to be as an individual. I'm just saying that. But it is nuanced, right? It's nuanced. And then now we see with Romania is that they're using the Russia election interference. And that's certainly the case, right? That's certainly happening. But they're using this as as a reason to cancel an election, because a right-wing guy who doesn't want to have war with Russia is gaining popularity. And they keep doing this stuff where anyone who's on the right or is deviating from the collective, the mob at this point is the left. When you look at it across the Western hemisphere, and then in the Eastern, though we have seen, and then Southern hemisphere, but we see pushback. They call it a pink wave when there's a populist right-wing pushback against the socialism and the left-wing institutions or left-wing of those countries. But Romania just canceled its election. And so now you're forced to contend with the question of like, is it worth canceling an election? Right. And at this point, they've thrown around Russian puppet and asset and all these things so much that they've diluted these words, just like the ribbons of my uniform for all of the things I did were diluted when generals who lost people under their command, and even after the Afghanistan retrograde, accepted their ribbons. Like, it didn't mean anything at that point. Same goes with like when you throw around words like Russian acid or whatever. Now it's like I don't believe it. First of all, if you're using Russian acid, and then it's tied with right wing, I already know this is something that was politicized, and whoever is doing it is either witting and weaponizing it to achieve their own objectives, or they're an unwitting NPC puppet of people who are pushing their own nefarious objectives, and these people are just not seeing the whole picture and can't see, and so they're also essentially like, we have to have that's why the Constitution's important, because we can push back, because bad speech, to fight bad speech, you need more speech.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't. And to Joey about the Prison Planet thing, listen, I'd love to get into that, but that is a can of worms that I don't know if I'm ready to open right now, because I am like I said, I've been up since 4 a.m., so I'm probably gonna have to call it soon. Prison Planet thing is a very interesting way to look at it, but I don't know. And I don't know. I can't see that being a possibility because when I look at Earth, I look at what, and people are so focused on living their lives according to, this religion, that religion, so they can get into heaven after this life. Everyone's so concerned with what happens after, when we don't realize that the paradise that we live in, called Earth, so such biodiversity, such different landscapes, and just experiences that you can have all over the world in different places, based on geographical location. It just goes to show how diverse this planet is, how amazing it really is. So if anything, I think it would be the opposite of a prison planet. I think it would be something that, we're remember when in COVID, where they called people super spreaders? We're like the life super spreader. That's what I think. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to think. Could you say that we're on a prison planet? Does it feel that way?
It did for a little bit. When I first had my experience, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Like, I just felt like I was stuck, especially because I broke space-time and then aliens, and then I'm stuck in my own circumstances. It did. But after I started to, figure things out, and a lot of it is also going inward, right? It was like a lot of going inward too and reflecting. Well, okay, like if I'm on a prison planet and they're like, you want to get on a ship and go somewhere else today? Where am I going to go? Like, do you want to hang out? If you want to not be around human beings, you want to be around aliens. Okay. Like, yeah, then the prison is that you can't go to Project Serpo or do anything like that. Right. Like, unless, I don't know, unless you if you really try to figure out how to find one of these secret space programs, I don't know. Like, that might not be a possibility.
I didn't believe you just said that. I didn't even, I would not have pegged someone like you who's to know something as obscure as that. That's very, very funny. Project Serpo. But it's also a synchronicity. So that's why I laugh. Sorry. Not at you, with you. But I don't know. Yeah. I don't think this is a prison. I think it's a paradise, and we often overlook that. We forget, and we're so concerned with, whatever comes next. It's like, dude, I don't know if you noticed, but nobody knows really. So enjoy yourself while you're here. But there are probably some, really good laws and morality, morale issues. Like, obviously, don't murder anybody. Murder. I didn't say kill. Don't murder. That kind of stuff. But for me, religion, it's hard to get behind, honestly. So, Michaela, I'm gonna start rambling soon, so I'm probably gonna have to wrap it here. I would really love to have you back on, though. You're someone I could go back and forth with about different issues, and I could see how you could be a good guest for various different issues. So if someone wanted to continue engaging with you and following what you're doing, how could they do that?
Yes. Honestly, this has been awesome. And we could talk about anything for forever. And I'd love to be back on the show. So if people want to find me, they can go to, my ex is just at Michaela Fachar. It's just spelled how my name is spelled. No space, obviously no space, no dot between, just Michaela Fachar. It's one word.
Yes, and the link is in the description below. Right past the bio, you can click the link and it'll bring you right to her page. Definitely follow her and stay in tune with what comes next, because I think we're about to have kind of like a global awakening to a degree. I think something's happening, and I look forward to seeing the end of the ride, or seeing it through at least.
Me too.
So again, thank you, Michaela, and to everyone watching. Super, super good way to help the show out, if you're watching, is to subscribe, like, and share, and do all the things every content creator tells you to do. But if you want to go a step further, you can help out and donate to the show. I basically call it is joining the membership. Everyone gets the same perks. It's pay what you want, but you all get the same shit: early access, ad-free, priority questions to guests. We just recorded with Chris Bledsoe and another experiencer, very high profile. So those episodes will be coming out in the following weeks. Very, very, very very interesting talk. So I would definitely hit the bell for notifications for those episodes. Michaela, amazing as always. I just want to again say thank you for your service to the country. I always like to remind everyone that, you know, our veterans, they need to be not just taken care of, but they need to be recognized, and we need to prop them up instead of letting them kind of go blind, go past us. And, you know, like I said, the homeless veteran issue is something that's close to me. I come from a military family as well. So it's something I'm always talking about. To everyone else in the podcast sphere, you know what it is. We'll see you on the other side. God, I'm tired. Whew.